The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Law number 1. Never outshine the master. Always make those above you feel comfortably superior. In your desire to please or impress them, do not go too far in displaying your talents, or you might accomplish the opposite, inspire fear and insecurity. Make your masters appear more brilliant than they are, and you will attain the heights of power. Especially that last part sounds very promising. In order to fully understand, let's take a look at history and learn from others' mistakes. The law has been observed in the story of King Louis XIV and his finance minister Nicolas Fouquet. First of all, who was Louis XIV? Louis XIV, as the fine Frenchman would say. He was the king monarch of Versailles, and in my humble opinion, probably the most interesting of all the French monarchs. His most famous quote is, "L'État, c'est moi." Literally, I am the state. He portrayed himself as the Sun King and had such might and power among his lands that he could make any decision he wanted without any discussion. He would ask for a pen and the whole room would be fighting each other for the chance to give him theirs, as to get in his good graces or be able to say they've done the great king a favor. This behavior was Nicolas Fouquet's downfall. In 17th century France, Nicolas Fouquet had spent enormous sums in building a magnificent chateau on his estate of Vaux-le-Vicomte. When the prime minister died, the position was abolished instead of replaced with Fouquet, the king's smart finance minister. In order to not lose the king's trust and regain his attention, he then planned the most spectacular party France had ever seen to show off his connections, cultivated manner and charm. It was a great tribute to the guest of honor, the king himself. Thinking this move would make him an indispensable asset, Fouquet had actually offended his master, who was outraged by the fact people were more charmed by his finance minister than by himself. Fouquet unintentionally outshone his master, making the king feel insecure. He was arrested the next day and spent the last 20 years of his life in solitary confinement high in the Pyrenees mountains, for having stolen enormous amounts from the country's treasury. The accusations were false, but such was the price of his actions, best intentions aside. A second example would be Galileo Galilei, one of the greatest minds of the 16th century who used this law in his favor. Galileo was clever in observing this law by giving glory to his patrons. In order to solve his perennial problem of funding, he dedicated his discovery of the moons of Jupiter to the Medici, since the royal symbol of the Medici family was the planet Jupiter. He then commissioned an emblem for them, with each moon representing one of the suns who revolved around the patriarch. The Medici family became his major patron, appointing him their official court mathematician and philosopher, thereby giving him a more comfortable life and a steady salary. So what are the lessons we should take away from the misfortune of Fouquet and the brilliance of Galileo? Present your ideas in a way that they echo your boss's thought. Act less smarter than your boss. Do not take your position at work or in life for granted. Always make sure to make it seem like you want to seek the superior's expertise and advice. Discreet flattery is very powerful. Law number 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Problem about working with friends is that it confuses the boundaries and distances that working requires. If both partners in the arrangement understand the dangers involved, a friend can often be employed to great effect. You must never let your guard down in such a venture, however. Always be on the lookout for any signs of emotional disturbance, such as envy and ingratitude. Nothing is stable in the realm of power, and even the closest of friends can be transformed into the worst of enemy. In order to fully understand, let's take a look at history and learn from others' mistakes. The law has been observed with Michael of the Byzantine Empire and his friend Basilius. In the mid-9th century AD, Michael had placed too much trust in his friend Basilius. They had met a few years before when Michael had been visiting the stables just as a wild horse got loose. Basilius saved Michael's life. His strength and courage had impressed Michael, who immediately raised Basilius from the obscurity of being a horse trainer to the position of head of stables. He loaded his friend with gifts and favors until they became inseparable. Michael turned the peasant Basilius into a sophisticated and educated courtier who later on became greedy for more wealth and power and had his former benefactor and best friend Michael murdered. Michael III staked his future on the sense of gratitude he thought Basilius must feel for him. He had created a monster. He had allowed a man to see power up close. A man who then wanted more, who asked for anything and got it, who felt encumbered by the charity he had received and simply did what many people do in such a situation. They forget the favors they have received and imagine they have earned their success by their own merits. Another example is the Song dynasty, who ruled China for 300 years. But how? I destroy my enemies when I make them my friends. Abraham Lincoln. For several centuries after the fall of the Han Dynasty, 8222, Chinese history followed the same pattern of violent and bloody coups one after the other. Army men would plot to kill a weak emperor, then would replace him on the dragon throne with a strong general. The general would start a new dynasty and crown himself emperor. To ensure his own survival, he would kill off his fellow generals. A few years later, however, the pattern would resume. New generals would arise and assassinate him or his sons in their turn. To be emperor of China was to be alone, surrounded by a pack of enemies. It was the least powerful, least secure position in the realm. In AD 959, General Cao Guangjin, I hope I'm saying this right, became Emperor Song. Emperor Song knew that his friends in the army would chew him up like meat, and if he somehow survived, his friends in the government would have him for supper. Emperor Song persuaded his generals to retire to a life of nobility and give up their dreams of grabbing his throne one day. He spared those who conspired against him and was able to win over enemies with his generosity. Song was finally able to break the pattern of coups, violence, and civil war. So, what can we learn from these historical events? Here are the lessons for working with friends and enemies. Friends will not openly disagree with you in order to avoid arguments. Enemies, on the other hand, expect nothing, so they will be surprised when you are generous. An enemy spared the guillotine will be more grateful to you than a friend. When you decide to hire a friend, you will discover qualities they have kept hidden. Be on the lookout for any signs of emotional disturbance such as envy and ingratitude. Skill and competence are more important than friendly feelings. Hiring friends will limit your power. All working situations require a kind of distance between people. You destroy an enemy when you make him a friend. An enemy at your heels keeps you sharp, alert, and focused. Law number 3. Conceal your intentions. Have you ever heard of a skillful general who intends to surprise a citadel announcing his plan to his enemy? Conceal your purpose and hide your progress. Do not disclose the extent of your designs until they cannot be opposed, until the combat is over. Win the victory before you declare the war. In a word, imitate those warlike people whose designs are not known except by the ravaged country through which they have passed. Ninon de l'Enclon. It takes effort to control your tongue and monitor what you reveal. It is much more prudent to tailor your words, telling people what they want to hear rather than the coarse and ugly truth of what you feel or think. More important, by being unabashedly open, you make yourself so predictable and familiar that it is almost impossible to respect or fear you, and power will not accrue to a person who cannot inspire such emotions. Train yourself in the art of concealing your intentions, master the art, and you will always have the upper hand. Our first instinct is to always trust appearances. This fact makes it relatively easy to conceal one's intentions. Let's talk about how people conceal intentions and fool you. Use decoyed objects of desire to throw people off. Support an idea or cause that is actually contrary to your own sentiments but will help you achieve your goal. Use this tactic in the following manner. Hide your intentions not by closing up, with the risk of appearing secretive and making people suspicious, but by talking endlessly about your desires and goals, just not your real ones. You will kill 3 birds with 1 stone. You appear friendly, open, and trusting. You conceal your intentions, and you send your rivals on time-consuming wild goose chases. False sincerity. People easily mistake sincerity for honesty. Remember, their first instinct is to trust appearances, and since they value honesty and want to believe in the honesty of those around them, they will rarely doubt you or see through your act. Seeming to believe what you say gives your words great weight. Remember, the best deceivers do everything they can to cloak their roguish qualities. They cultivate an air of honesty in one area to disguise their dishonesty in others. Honesty is merely another decoy in their arsenal of weapons. Bland facial expression. Behind a bland, unreadable exterior, all sorts of mayhem can be planned without detection. This is a weapon that the most powerful men in history have learned to perfect. Noble gesture. People want to believe apparently noble gestures are genuine, for the belief is pleasant. They rarely notice how deceptive these gestures can be. Appearing to belong to a group. The tendency to mistake appearances for reality, the feeling that if someone seems to belong to your group, their belonging must be real. This habit makes the seamless blend a very effective front. The trick is simple. You simply blend in with those around you, and the better you blend in, the less suspicious you become. Remember, it takes patience and humility to dull your brilliant colors, to put on the mask of the unconspicuous. Do not despair at having to wear such a bland mask. It is often your unreadability that draws people to you and makes you appear a person of power. But how do people apply these ways to fool you? Simply dangle an object you seem to desire, a goal you seem to aim for in front of people's eyes, and they will take the appearance for reality. Once their eyes focus on the decoy, they will fail to notice what you're really up to. Politicians use this all the time. Our first historical example would be decoyed objects of desire and making a woman fall in love. The Marquis or Marquise de Sévigné was inexperienced in the art of love. He confided in the infamous courtesan of 17th century France, Ninon de Lenclon, to instruct him on how to seduce a difficult young countess. She made him follow a plan over a number of weeks, where the Marquise would be appearing in public always surrounded by beautiful women in the very places the Countess would be expected to see him. He was supposed to assume an air of nonchalance. This increased the jealousy of the young Countess, who was not sure of his interest in her. One day the Marquise, unable to control his passion, broke from Ninon's plan and blurted out to the Countess that he loved her. After this admission, the Countess no longer found him interesting and avoided him. The whole premise of dating is based on games, wild moves, and being unpredictable. If you display your feelings too soon, it becomes an artless show of passion, a door closed that would never open again. In seduction, set up conflicting signals such as desire and indifference, and you not only throw them off the scent, you inflame their desire to possess you. Another example, Otto von Bismarck became Prime Minister of Prussia. Otto von Bismarck was a deputy in the Prussian parliament at a time when many fellow deputies thought it was possible to go to war against Austria and defeat it. Bismarck wanted to go to war, but he knew that the king was not in favor of it. He also knew the Prussian army was not prepared, so he devised a clever way. He publicly stated his praises for the Austrians and talked about the madness of war. Many deputies changed their votes. Had Bismarck announced his real intentions, arguing it was better to wait now and fight later, he would not have won. Most Prussians wanted to go to war at that moment and mistakenly believed their army to be superior to the Austrians. Had he gone to the king, his sincerity would have been doubted. By giving misleading statements about wanting peace and concealing his true purpose, Bismarck's speech catapulted him to the position of prime minister. He later had the country go to war against the Austrians at the right time, when he felt the Prussian army was more capable and united with Germany. Yet another example, the Duke of Marlborough used this in the Spanish Succession. During the War of the Spanish Succession in 1711, the Duke of Marlborough, head of the English army, wanted to destroy a key French fort because it protected a vital thoroughfare into France. Yet he knew that if he destroyed it, the French would realize what he wanted, to advance down that road. Instead, then he merely captured the fort and garrisoned it with some of his troops, making it appear as if he wanted it for some purpose of his own. The French attacked the fort and the Duke let them recapture it. Once they had it back, they destroyed it, figuring that the Duke had wanted it for some important reason. Now that the fort was gone, the road was unprotected and Marlborough could easily march into France. What else? Henry Kissinger used bland face to win opponents. Henry Kissinger would bore his opponents around the negotiating table to tears with his monotonous voice, his blank look, his endless recitations of details. Then, as their eyes glazed over, he would suddenly hit them with a list of bold terms. Caught off guard, they would be easily intimidated. As one poker manual explains it, while playing his hand, the good player is seldom an actor. Instead, he practices a bland behavior that minimizes readable turns, frustrates and confuses opponents, permits greater concentration. Spies use appearing to belong to a group method. During the Cold War of the 1950s and 60s, as is now notorious, a slew of British civil servants passed secrets to the Soviets. They went undetected for years because they were apparently decent chaps, had gone to all the right schools and fit the old boy network perfectly. Law number 4. Always say less than necessary. There are times when it is unwise to be silent. Silence can arouse suspicion and even insecurity, especially in your superiors. A vague or ambiguous comment can open you up to interpretations you had not bargained for. Silence and saying less than necessary must be practiced with caution, then and in the right situations. Let us take a look at 6 ways to exert more power by practicing listening. Make people reveal more about themselves. Speaking less will make people reveal more about themselves. This is information you may be able to use against them later on. Your short answers and silences will put them on the defensive and they will jump in, nervously filling the silence with all kinds of comments that will reveal valuable information about them and their weaknesses. The longer you listen, the more others move their lips and teeth. As they move their lips and teeth, you can thereby understand their real intentions. Number 2. People listen and interpret your every word carefully. Speaking less will force people to listen and interpret your every word carefully. Your silence will make other people uncomfortable. Humans are machines of interpretation and explanation. They have to know what you're thinking. When you carefully control what you reveal, they cannot pierce your intentions or your meaning. They will leave a meeting with you and they will go home and ponder your every word. This extra attention to your brief comments will only add to your power. Masters of Enigma Andy Warhol and Marcel Duchamp knew the power of saying less and keeping people guessing. The less Duchamp talked about his work, the more it was talked about in the art circles. Andy Warhol recognized it was hard to talk people into doing what you wanted, so when interviewed, he would give vague and ambiguous answers and let the interviewer find his own interpretation. Number 3. Once the words are out, you cannot take them back. Keep them under control. Be particularly careful with sarcasm. The momentary satisfaction you gain with your biting words will be outweighed by the price you pay. Number 4. The more you say, the more common you appear. When you're trying to impress people with words, the more you say, the more common you appear and the less in control. Even if you're saying something banal, it will seem original if you make it vague, open-ended and sphinx-like. Number 5. Saying less will keep you from saying something foolish or even dangerous. Around 454 BC, Coriolanus was a great military hero of ancient Rome. People held him in awe. He decided to run for the Senate and he spoke his mind, hardly able to control his arrogance and boastfulness. He slandered and insulted people. The more speeches he made, the less people respected him. He suffered the people's wrath and was eventually banished from the city. Number 6. People will not deceive you as they will never know your position. Louis XIV was a man of very few words. His infamous "I shall see" was one of several extremely short phrases that he would apply to all manner of requests. Louis was not always this way. As a young man he was known for talking at length, delighting in his own eloquence. His later taciturnity was self-imposed, an act, a mask he used to keep everybody below him off balance. No one knew exactly where he stood or could predict his reactions. No one could try to deceive him by saying what they thought he wanted to hear, because no one knew what he wanted to hear. As they talked on and on to the silent Louis, they revealed more and more about themselves, information he would later use against them to great effect. In the end, Louis' silence kept those around him terrified and under his thumb. It was one of the foundations of his power. As Saint Simon wrote, no one knew as well as he how to sell his words, his smile and even his glances. Everything in him was valuable because he created differences, and his majesty was enhanced by the sparseness of his words. Saying less than necessary is not for kings and statesmen only. In most areas of life, the less you say, the more profound and mysterious you appear. By saying less than necessary, you create the appearance of meaning and power. Also, the less you say, the less risk you run of saying something foolish. Law number 5. So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life. Reputation is the cornerstone of power. In the social realm, appearances are the barometer of almost all our judgments. Your reputation will protect you in the dangerous game of appearances, distracting the probing eyes of others from knowing what you really like, and giving you a degree of control over how the world judges you. A powerful position to be in. Why is reputation important? A strong reputation increases your presence and exaggerates your strengths without you having to spend much energy. It can also create an aura around you that will instill respect, even fear. In the fighting in the North African desert during World War II, the German general Erwin Rommel had a reputation for cunning and deceptive maneuvering that struck terror into everyone who faced him. Even when his forces were depleted and the British tanks outnumbered his by 5-1, entire cities would be evacuated at the news of his approach. As they say, your reputation inevitably precedes you, and if it inspires respect, a lot of your work is done for you before you arrive on the scene or utter a single word. During China's War of the Three Kingdoms AD 207 to 265, General Liang was able to fool his rival Sima Yi simply by letting his track record for being an undefeated leader in battle do the work for him. Liang's troops were far outnumbered by Sima Yi's, yet he devised a clever last resort plan. Liang donned a Taoist robe and played the lute upon the wall of the city he was defending. His soldiers opened the gates and hid. When Sima Yi's troops advanced upon the unguarded city, Yi recognized his opponent sitting alone upon the wall. Fearing a trap, Sima Yi called his soldiers to retreat. How do you build a reputation? In the beginning, you must work to establish a reputation for one outstanding quality, whether generosity or honesty or cunning. This quality sets you apart and gets other people to talk about you. You then make your reputation known to as many people as possible, and watch as it spreads like wildfire. Do this subtly. Take care to build slowly and with a firm foundation. Reputation is a treasure to be carefully collected and hoarded, especially when you are first establishing it. You must protect it strictly, anticipating all attacks on it. Make your reputation simple and base it on one sterling quality. This single quality, efficiency say, or seductiveness, becomes a kind of calling card that announces your presence and places others under a spell. A reputation for honesty will allow you to practice all manner of deception. Casanova used his reputation as a great seducer to pave the way for his future conquests. Women who had heard of his powers became immensely curious and wanted to discover for themselves what had made him so romantically successful. We'll cover 4 ways to safeguard and grow your reputation. Number 1. Never appear desperate in your self-defense against the slander of others. Do not let yourself get angry or defensive at the slanderous comments of your enemies. It reveals insecurity, not confidence in your reputation. Take the high road instead and never appear desperate in your self-defense. Number 2. Sow doubt and spread rumors about your rival. An attack on other man's reputation is a potent weapon, particularly when you have less power than he does. He has much more to lose in such a battle, and your own thus far small reputation gives him a small target when he tries to return your fire. P.T. Burnham used such campaigns to great effect in his early career, but this tactic must be practiced with skill. You must not seem to engage in petty vengeance. If you do not break your enemy's reputation cleverly, you will inadvertently ruin your own. Even if they deny it, people will still be wondering why they are so defensive. Burnham used his tactics to ruin his competition Peel's reputation by sowing doubts about Peel's museum stability and solvency. Doubt is a powerful weapon. Once you let it out of the bag with insidious rumors, your opponents are in a horrible dilemma. On the one hand, they can deny the rumors, even prove that you have slandered them, but a layer of suspicion will remain. Why are they defending themselves so desperately? Maybe the rumor has some truth to it. If on the other hand they take the high road and ignore you, the doubts will be even stronger. If done correctly, the sowing of rumors can so infuriate and unsettle your rivals that in defending themselves, they will make numerous mistakes. This is the perfect weapon for those who have no reputation of their own to work from. Number 3. If you go too far in attacking another's reputation, it draws more attention to your wrongfulness than to the other person you're slandering. Thomas Edison, considered the inventor who harnessed electricity, believed that a workable system would have to be based on direct current, DC. When the Serbian scientist Nikola Tesla appeared to have succeeded in creating a system based on alternating current, AC, Edison was furious. He determined to ruin Tesla's reputation by making the public believe that the AC system was inherently unsafe and Tesla irresponsible in promoting it. To this end, he captured all kinds of household pets and electrocuted them to death with an AC current. When this wasn't enough, in 1890 he got New York State prison authorities to organize the world's first execution by electrocution using an AC current. But Edison's electrocution experiments had all been with small creatures. The charge was too weak and the man was only half killed. In perhaps the country's crudest state-authorized execution, the procedure had to be repeated. It was an awful spectacle. Although in the long run it is Edison's name that has survived, at the time his campaign damaged his own reputation more than Tesla's. He backed off. The lesson is simple. Never go too far in attacks like these, for that will draw more attention to your own wrongfulness than to the person you are slandering. Number 4. Use humor or gentle mockery at your rival's expense. When your own reputation is solid, use subtler tactics, such as satire and ridicule, to weaken your opponent while making you out as a charming rogue. The mighty lion toys with the mouse that crosses his path. Any other reaction would mar his fearsome reputation. Once Burnham did have a reputation of his own, he used a fake hypnotism demonstration. He ridiculed his rival Peel's reputation. He was extremely successful. Once you have a solid base of respect, ridiculing your opponent puts him on the defensive and draws more attention to you, enhancing your own reputation. Outright slander and insult are too strong at this point. They are ugly and may hurt you more than help you. But gentle humor and mockery suggest that you have a strong enough sense of your own worth to enjoy a good laugh at your rival's expense. A humorous front can make you out as a harmless entertainer while poking holes in the reputation of your rival. How do you improve a bad reputation? Perhaps you have already stained your reputation so that you're prevented from establishing a new one. In such cases, it is wise to associate with someone whose image counteracts your own, using their good name to whitewash and elevate yours. It is hard, for example, to erase a reputation for dishonesty by yourself, but a paragon of honesty can help. When P.T. Burnham wanted to clean up a reputation for promoting vulgar entertainment, he brought the singer Jenny Lind over from Europe. She had a stellar high-class reputation, and the American tour Burnham sponsored for her greatly enhanced his own image. Similarly, the great robber barons of 19th century America were long unable to rid themselves of a reputation for cruelty and mean spirit. Only when they began collecting art, so that the names of Morgan and Frick became permanently associated with those of Da Vinci and Rembrandt, court attention at all cost. Be ostentatious and be seen. What is not seen is as though it did not exist. It was light that first caused all creation to shine forth. Display fills up many blanks, covers up deficiencies, and gives everything a second life, especially when it is backed by genuine merit. Balthazar Gracian. Everything is judged by its appearance. What is unseen counts for nothing. Never let yourself get lost in the crowd, then or buried in oblivion. Stand out. Be conspicuous at all cost. Make yourself a magnet of attention by appearing larger, more colorful, more mysterious than the bland and timid masses. Why fame is important in every field of work. Burning more brightly than those around you is a skill that no one is born with. You have to learn to attract attention. At the start of your career, you must attach your name and reputation to a quality, an image that sets you apart from other people. This image can be something like a characteristic style of dress, or a personality quirk that amuses people and gets talked about. Once the image is established, you have an appearance, a place in the sky for your star. Our first historical example. The court of Louis XIV contained many talented writers, artists, great beauties, and men and women of impeccable virtue. But no one was more talked about than the singular Duc de Lauzun. The Duke was short, almost dwarfish, and he was prone to the most insolent kinds of behavior. He slept with the king's mistress and openly insulted not only other courtiers but the king himself. Louis, however, was so beguiled by the Duke's eccentricities that he could not bear his absences from the court. It was simple. The strangeness of the Duke's character attracted attention. Once people were entrailed by him, they wanted him around at any cost. The great scientist Edison knew that to raise money he had to remain in the public eye at any cost. Almost as important as the inventions themselves was how he presented them to the public and courted attention. Edison would design visually dazzling experiments to display his discoveries with electricity. He would talk of future inventions that seemed fantastic at the time, robots and machines that could photograph thought, and that he had no intention of wasting his energy on, but that made the public talk about him. He did everything he could to make sure that he received more attention than his great rival Nikola Tesla, who may actually have been more brilliant than he was, but whose name was far less known. In 1915, it was rumored that Edison and Tesla would be joint recipients of that year's Nobel Prize in Physics. The prize was eventually given to a pair of English physicists. Only later was it discovered that the prize committee had actually approached Edison, but he had turned them down. By that time, his fame was more secure than Tesla's, and he thought it would be better to refuse the honor than to allow his rival the attention that would have come even from sharing the prize. Let's look at 6 ways you can become famous and make your ideas more popular than the competition's. Number 1. Attack the sensational, scandalous. If you find yourself in a lowly position that offers little opportunity for you to draw attention, an effective trick is to attack the most visible, most famous, most powerful person you can find. Example of Pietro Aretino. When Aretino, a young Roman servant boy of the early 16th century, wanted to get attention as a writer of verses, he decided to publish a series of satirical poems ridiculing the Pope and his affection for a pet elephant. The attack put Aretino in the public eye immediately. A slanderous attack on a person in a position of power would have a similar effect. However, remember to use such tactics sparingly after you have the public's attention. Then the act can wear thin. Number 2. Keep reinventing yourself. Once in the limelight, you must constantly renew it by adapting and varying your method of courting attention. If you don't, the public will grow tired, will take you for granted, and will move on to a newer star. The game requires constant vigilance and creativity. Number 3. Be unpredictable. People feel superior to the person whose actions they can predict. If you show them who is in control by playing against their expectations, you will gain their respect and tighten your hold on their fleeting attention. Pablo Picasso, the greatest painter in the world. Picasso never allowed himself to fade into the background. If his name became too attached to a particular style, he would deliberately upset the public with a new series of paintings that went against all expectations. Better to create something ugly and disturbing, he believed, than to let viewers grow too familiar with his work. Number 4. Create an air of mystery. In a world growing increasingly banal and familiar, what seems enigmatic instantly draws attention. Never make it too clear what you're doing or about to do. Do not show all your cards. An air of mystery heightens your presence. It also creates anticipation. Everyone will be watching you to see what happens next. Use mystery to beguile, seduce, even frighten. If you do not declare yourself immediately, you arouse expectation. Mix a little mystery with everything, and the very mystery stirs up veneration. And when you explain, be not too explicit. In this manner you imitate the divine way when you cause men to wonder and watch. Balthazar Gracian, once again. Number 5. Better to be attacked, slandered, than ignored. It is a common mistake to imagine that this peculiar appearance of yours should not be controversial, that to be attacked is somehow bad. Nothing could be further from the truth. To avoid being a flash in the pan and having your notoriety eclipsed by another, you must not discriminate between different types of attention. In the end, every kind will work in your favor. Welcome personal attacks and feel no need to defend yourself. P.T. Barnum, the greatest entertainer in the world. Barnum learned about courting attention to his favor. Any form of publicity would benefit his entertainment business, no matter if it were bad publicity. He promoted his shows of curiosities to audiences with all kinds of gimmicks. He would offer free music for millions, but hire bad musicians, so the crowd would end up buying tickets to the show so they could avoid the bands. He planted articles in newspapers and even sent anonymous letters to keep his name in the limelight. Number 6. Make yourself appear larger than life. Society craves larger-than-life figures, people who stand above the general mediocrity. Never be afraid, then, of the qualities that set you apart and draw attention to you. Court controversy, even scandal. It is better to be attacked, even slandered, than ignored. All professions are ruled by this law, and all professionals must have a bit of the showman about them. Law number 7. Get others to do the work for you. Use the wisdom, knowledge, and legwork of other people to further your own cause. Not only will such assistance save you valuable time and energy, it will give you an aura of efficiency and speed. In the end, your helpers will be forgotten and you will be remembered. Never do yourself what others can do for you. Thomas Edison was the consummate genius of other people's efforts. After hiring a Serbian scientist and inventor by the name of Nikola Tesla, who toiled day and night to improve Edison's antiquated invention dynamos, or as we know them today, generators, Tesla was told by Edison that he would receive $50,000 for redesigning the system of electrical current. Within a year, Tesla created an improved version of the dynamo, and instead of receiving $50,000, he was given a raise by Edison, who knew that his company would get all the credit for the work that was done by Tesla. Nikola Tesla is a prime example of what not to do. He was never credited for any of his work. He was the inventor of the alternate current system, AC, which is synonymous with Westinghouse. Financiers divested Tesla from the credit, patents, and riches that he would have received, which approximates at $12 million instead of the $216,000 that he accepted as payment. He was not even acknowledged for his patent filed in 1897 when another man, Marconi, took credit for inventing the radio. Tesla is the true father of the radio. This is a sad yet true story about a man who was obsessed with his work, yet really never got the accolades or the money, nor the respect that he deserved. Edison, on the other hand, saw the requisite to hire the best in the field to do work that he himself would take credit for. This does not beg the question who would you rather be, but it is a cautionary lesson. 4 reasons why you should utilize others. Number 1. Nobody likes a run-down, burnt-out hero. If you insist on doing all the work yourself, then you will never get very far. Hiring someone or others to do the work for you will give you a godlike quality that others will admire. Take artist Peter Paul Rubens, for example. He assembled a vast array of outstanding artists to paint canvases so that when a client would visit Rubens' studio, it appeared to the client that Rubens was working arduously on his paintings, when in essence the painting was already nearly finished. Number 2. There are some skills you do not possess. Hiring people who possess skills that you yourself lack is probably one of the wisest decisions you can make. Like in the case of artist Rubens, he hired different types of artists. One artist specialized in ropes, another specialized in backgrounds, and so on. This is what enabled him to appear to be working diligently on his paintings. Although he had procured others to do these paintings, he was able to put his name on the work, thus being the genius who got the credit and the money. Number 3. Standing on the shoulders of giants can be brilliantly manipulated. Isaac Newton, a genius in his own right, made his discoveries built on the achievement of others. Shakespeare borrowed plots and other works from several writers, and we can only guess how many people plagiarized the works of Shakespeare himself. Using the knowledge of the past just makes you a clever borrower, and this in of itself is genius. Number 4. Sharing the credit with others. There is absolutely nothing wrong with sharing the credit with someone, especially when that someone is your superior. Take Henry Kissinger, the Secretary of State under Richard Nixon. If it had not been for Kissinger's diplomacy, Nixon's historic visit to the People's Republic of China would not have been as successful as it was. Knowing when to hold back by not hogging the spotlight is also a talent that will be beneficial in the long term. Be wise in your decision. Make sure that your position is unshakable, or you will be accused of pushing people out of the limelight, and deception is not a word that you want to be associated with. Picture the vulture. He has it the easiest. The hard work of others becomes his work due to their failure to survive, and they become his nourishment. While you are working hard, he is hovering. Do not fight him, join him. He is vigilant, ruthless, and quiet. 3 qualities that you must acquire to secure credit for an invention or creation until you can make it your own. The credit for an invention is as important, if not more important, than the invention itself. Bismarck once said, "Fools say that they learn from experience. I prefer to profit by others' experience." Law number 7. Make other people come to you. Use bait if necessary. When you force the other person to act, you are the one in control. It is always better to make your opponent come to you, abandoning his own plans in the process. Lure him with fabulous gains, then attack. You hold the cards. Charles Maurice de Talleyrand, the foreign minister to Napoleon, can attest to this caveat. Talleyrand was a mastermind manipulator who was behind the dramatic escape of Napoleon after his exile to the island of Elba. Talleyrand knew that Napoleon's arrogance was his weakness, and he played to that weakness like a strategic poker player. Not showing his true feelings toward the emperor, Talleyrand bided his time, made the right connections, which helped create the most elaborate scheme to dethrone one of the world's most infamous people, Napoleon Bonaparte. These are some strategies to keep in mind during war times. Reacting rather than directing. Keep others reacting to your moves. Keep them on the defensive. Play to their ineffectiveness to stay calm. Aggression versus effective action. Don't waste a lot of energy trying to make your point. Bide your time like Talleyrand. Make the other person come to you. Set the bait. Control the situation. Know your opponent's weakness. He who has control has the power. Master your emotions. Never be influenced through your anger. Aggressive people are never in control. Case in point. During the Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905, Japan was able to plant false information that made the Russian fleet go 6,000 miles out of the way and forced the Russians into hostile territory. The Russian seamen were weak and exhausted by the journey, and although Japan had the weaker naval militia, they planted the bait which gave them the upper hand on the Russians, and needless to say, the Japanese crushed the Russians because of their reaction to the rumor. Now 5 benefits to making your opponents come to you. It is a wise thing to lure your opponent on hostile ground. It is a subtle way to put him on the defensive. Your opponent will be nervous, which will cause him to rush his actions and make mistakes. You want to create the illusion that your opponent is in control of the situation. Oftentimes your opponent's greed, desires and emotions will be their great motivator, which means that they can be easily led around and or defeated. Getting people to dig their own graves forces their hand and makes you appear powerful and demand respect. Now, is there ever a good time to go to your opponent, you ask? Yes, of course, there is an exception to the rule when you should go to your opponent. Depending on the situation, bait and wait is a wise choice, but taking the lead to attack your opponent can be advantageous as well. The element of surprise does not give the opponent time to think of a counterattack. They are left at your mercy and must respond to your terms. Your biggest issue is to know what tactic to use and the right time to use it. To bait and wait or to strike with force, that is the dilemma. You can be like the bear hunter who lays the honey bait trap. He doesn't exhaust himself and risk his life to find the bear. He lays a trap and waits patiently for the bear to come to him. Or if time is not on your side, strike quickly to intimidate and control. Choose your approach wisely. Win through your actions, never through argument. Any momentary triumph you think you've gained through argument is really a Pyrrhic victory. The resentment and ill will you stir up is stronger and lasts longer than any momentary change of opinion. It is much more powerful to get others to agree with you through your actions, without saying a word. Demonstrate, do not explicate. Take the example of the engineer in Athens receiving orders from his commander Mucianus to send the largest ship's mast to be used to help in the siege of the town of Pergamus. The engineer argued that what the commander needed was not the larger mast, but the smaller, which would be better suited for the task. Mucianus was infuriated and sent for the engineer, who continued to try to explain his reasoning for sending the smaller mast. For his disobedience, he was flogged and scorched with rods until he died. The engineer's argument went on deaf ears. Nobody cared whether or not it was more prudent to use the smaller mast. The fact of the matter was that a superior gave a command, and he decided that by insulting the intelligence of his master by arguing was more important. Unlike Michelangelo, the engineer did not exercise the correctness of his ideas indirectly. When Florence's mayor Piero Soderini told Michelangelo that the nose on his sculpture that he had been commissioned to do of a young David with sling in hand was too big, he did not argue that the nose was just right. Michelangelo merely took the mayor onto the scaffolding and gave the appearance of changing the nose. Soderini was pleased and no one was offended. You've definitely heard the old adage, actions speak louder than words. Actions and demonstrations are much more powerful than any rhetoric that one can spew out his mouth. There are no offensive words, no possibility of misinterpretation, no one can argue with demonstrated proof. As Baltasar Gracian remarks, the truth is generally seen, rarely heard. Yet beyond actions, the most powerful persuasion is symbolic. Symbols like a flag or mythic story or monument is something we all understand without the exchanging of one word. Henry Kissinger, who in 1979 suddenly broke off an intense meeting with the Israelis over the return of the Sinai Desert to go sightseeing on an ancient place in Masada. Masada is where 7,000 Jewish warriors were said to commit mass suicide in AD 73. Rather than give in to the Roman troops, the Israelis knew that Kissinger's message was much more than just a warning. It was a significant emotional symbol that made them think far more seriously than any oratorical rhetoric he could have placated. Choose your battles wisely. Sometimes it is the best thing to conserve your energy and walk away. Then there are other times when the heat of an argument will be beneficial to you. On the opposite end of the spectrum, it is advantageous to argue with all the convictions you can muster. The more emotional, the better. Especially when caught in a web of deception, you need to draw the other person into the argument so as to distract and confuse. Phases of a convincing deceptive argument. 1. Feign ignorance. Like the con artist Victor Lustig, who sold boxes for $10,000 and claimed that the boxes could make money, when confronted by Sheriff Richards of Ramsey County, Oklahoma, that the box did not work, he acted as if he could not believe it. He went as far as to ask the sheriff if he had operated it properly. This is the way to place doubt in the mind of the offended party. I mean, that's hilarious. A box that can make money. 2. Put a technical spin or rhetoric on the deception. In the case of Lustig, he was masterful in his wording about the box. This was nothing more than a bunch of technical jibber-jabber that further confused the sheriff, who then let his guard down because of his own insecurity about the function of the box. 3. Offer something for nothing. Lustig offered to give the sheriff his money back and to come back to the town to fix the box, although he knew that the box would never work and the money was not real. He diffused a situation that could have been deadly for him. He had won the argument and was able to get the sheriff jailed for passing counterfeit bills in the process. Law number 10. Infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. You can die from someone else's misery. Emotional states are as infectious as diseases. You may feel you're helping the drowning man, but you're only precipitating your own disaster. The unfortunate sometimes draw misfortune on themselves. They will also draw it on you. Associate with the happy and fortunate instead. The infector possesses an inward instability that radiates outward, drawing disaster to all that they touch. Mary Gilbert, aka Lola Montez of Ireland, was one such person. Lola found herself in the role of a courtesan, prostitute of the royal court. In today's society, Lola would be considered a gold digger. She only sought out men with high social standing in the community that she could use for her own gain. Once she would have her hooks in these men, their slow demise began. One of her victims was King Ludwig of Bavaria, who felt compelled to help Lola. Yet once he was warned of the dangers of his affair with her, he could not seem to resist Lola's aura and almost found his once peaceful country in a state of civil war. It was not until then that the king finally ordered Lola to leave, but a month after she left, King Ludwig was forced to relinquish his throne. There are many men who suffered because of their association with Lola Montez. King Ludwig said that he was bewitched by Lola. Lola was an unstable, incurable, and infectious character type. This is not to say that these characteristics are only restricted to women. This is to say that there are some people whose emotions are so powerful that they infect the very soul of the people that they touch. How to recognize an infector? They draw misfortune upon themselves. They have a turbulent past. They have a long line of broken relationships. They have an unstable career. They have a forceful character that sweeps you up and makes you lose reason. They have a desire to destroy and unsettle, and is chronically dissatisfied. They have great effect on the world around them. And what do you do when you meet one? Don't argue with them. This is part of how they trap you. Don't try to help them no matter what they say. Don't pass the person on to your friends or you will become enmeshed. Flee the infector's presence or suffer the consequences. Learn to fear the power of infection. The risk of associating with infectors is that you will waste valuable time and energy trying to free yourself. Through a kind of guilt by association, you will also suffer in the eyes of others. On the other side of the spectrum of infectors are those people who attract happiness through their good cheer, natural buoyancy, and intelligence. They are a source of pleasure, and you must associate with them to share in the prosperity they draw upon themselves. All positive qualities can infect us, but taking advantage of the emotional side of this osmosis may be difficult. Now I put down 5 ways to affect positive change through your associations. If you are miserly by nature, associate with the generous and they will infect you, opening up everything that is tight and restricted in you. Only generous souls attain greatness. If you are gloomy, gravitate to the cheerful. If you are prone to isolation, force yourself to befriend the gregarious. Never associate with those who share your defects. They will reinforce what holds you back. One simple example is the meth head who tries to break out of the cycle of drugs and still just hangs out with his other meth head friends. It's just a very difficult environment. And 5, only create associations with positive affinities. So to quote Balthasar Gracian once again, recognize the fortunate so that you may choose their company and the unfortunate so that you may avoid them. Misfortune is usually the crime of folly, and among those who suffer from it there is no malady more contagious. Never open your door to the least of misfortunes, for if you do, many others will follow in its train. Do not die of another's misery. Law number 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. To maintain your independence, you must always be needed and wanted. The more you are relied on, the more freedom you have. Make people depend on you for their happiness and prosperity, and you have nothing to fear. Never teach them enough so that they can do without you. Necessity rules the world. People rarely act unless compelled to. If you create no need for yourself, then you will be done away with at first opportunity. If on the other hand you understand the laws of power and make others depend on you for their welfare, if you can counteract their weakness with your own iron and blood, as Bismarck said, then you will survive your masters just as he did. You will have all the benefits of power without the thorns that come from being a master. Bismarck understood the importance of keeping people dependent. He sought out the weak ruler Frederick William IV, King of Prussia, and created a relationship of dependency. He was a key player in restoring the king's power so much that when the king died, his brother who preceded him depended on Bismarck as well. Bismarck became their strength, intelligence, and their spine in the process. He became a powerful force to reckon with. He was the man behind the throne, calling the shots. Now, 10 ways to manipulate power. Number 1. Do seek out weak people in power. Seeking out those already in power is foolish. They will swallow you up and spit you out. They do not need anything from you. Number 2. Get people to do as you wish without force or hurt. If you have to bully someone into doing what you want, that is not power. The key is making the person believe that your services are needed, and without you they will be completely lost. Number 3. Enmesh yourself in the work of your superior. By doing this, your superior knows that to get rid of you is futile. They cannot afford to train another without losing time and a lot of money. Number 4. Possess a talent and creative skill that simply cannot be replaced. People think twice before getting rid of you, because to get rid of you may spell disaster or even death. A little over-exaggerated here, if you're in the office, right? I mean, death. But looking back, that is very much the case. Number 5. Create a situation in which you can always latch on to another patron. This just simply means you have other places that will welcome your skills and talents in your sights. Your employer knows that they cannot easily find another work with your particular talent, so they will jump hoops to keep you in their employ. Number 6. Have the appearance of specialized knowledge and skill. This gives you leeway in your ability to deceive those above you into thinking they cannot do without you. It is always in your power to make your skills indispensable. Number 7. Wrap yourself around the source of power. You have placed yourself in a position that to cut you away would cause great trauma. You do not necessarily have to entwine yourself around the superior. Another person will do, as long as he or she too is indispensable in the chain. Number 8. Use the secret intelligence tactic. By knowing people's secrets, you seal your position with them. Downside to this is that the paranoia and insecurity that the power that it provides cancels itself out. What good is power without peace? Number 9. Do not imagine your superior's dependence on you will make them love you. It is more likely that they resent and fear you, which is better that they fear the consequences of losing you rather than out of love for your company. Number 10. Better to place yourself in a position of mutual dependence. The weakness of making others depend on you is that you are in some measure dependent on them. Although this is true, you will not have the unbearable pressure of being on top, and your superior will in essence be your slave, for he will depend on you. Louis XI, the great Spider King of France, once asked his astrologer to tell of his own fate and how long he had to live. The astrologer replied, "I shall die just 3 days before your majesty." The king was vexed because he had planned to kill the astrologer that day, fearing the astrologer had killed people to prove his forecasting, or that his might in astrology was real and therefore dangerous in of itself. The king spared his life, looked after him, gave him gifts, and even had several doctors check his health to ensure he would live as long as possible. The astrologer actually survived the king by several years, proving his mastery of power. Law number 12. Use selective honesty to disarm your victim. One sincere and honest move will cover over dozens of dishonest ones. Open-hearted gestures of honesty and generosity bring down the guard of even the most suspicious people. Once your selective honesty opens a hole in their armor, you can deceive and manipulate them at will. A timely gift, a Trojan horse, will serve the same purpose. 7 ways you can disarm anyone. Through an act of apparent sincerity and honesty. This is called selective honesty. Who will distrust a person literally caught in the act of being honest? This is an unexpected, well-timed gesture that conflicts the emotions and distracts the one being disarmed, and have the most brutal and cynical beast in the kingdom eating out of your hand. In ancient China, this was called the giving before the taking. The giving makes it hard for the other person to see the taking. Victor Lustig is one of the best examples of this law at work. Lustig was a con man of great distinction, refinement, and culture, and his knowledge of human psychology was his most important characteristic. He was so confident in himself that he was able to con Al Capone, the most feared gangster of his time, out of $5,000. Capone never knew what happened because Lustig disarmed him through selective honesty. Lustig returned $15,000 to Capone for allowing him to take the money in order to double it in 60 days. Lustig took the money and left it in a safety deposit box until the 60 days were over. He went back to Capone, apologized profusely about the deal falling through, and returned the original $50,000. Capone had already pegged Lustig as a con artist, but when Lustig returned the money, it confused Capone and he dropped his guard and gave Lustig $5,000 just for being honest. Number 2. Learn to give before you take. It softens the ground, takes the bite out of a future request, or simply creates a distraction. And the giving can take many forms. An actual gift, a generous act, a kind favor, an honest admission, whatever it takes. Number 3. Use selective honesty on your first encounter with someone. First impressions last a long time. If someone believes you are honest at the start of your relationship, it takes a lot to convince them otherwise. A conman by the name of Lord John Gordon proved to Jay Gould, another conman, that phony Erie railroad stocks that Gould had invested in was the work of top executives at railroad. Gould was so grateful to Gordon that they became friends, buying the controlling interest of the railroad. Soon Gordon betrayed Gould and disappeared. He was a conman, but his initial act of honesty and support had so blinded Gould that it took the loss of millions for him to see through the scheme. Number 4. You must build a reputation for honesty based on a series of acts. Duke Wu of Cheng married off his daughter and killed one of his ministers in order to take over the powerful kingdom of Hu. The ruler of Hu heard that the minister was executed for telling Cheng to conquer the kingdom of Hu. Hu's ruler also considered the marriage of Cheng's daughter and other acts of kindness from Cheng and let down his guard. A few weeks later, Cheng forces swept through Hu and took the country, never to relinquish it. Number 5. Only few people can resist a gift, even from the most hardened enemy, which is why it is often the perfect way to disarm people. A gift brings out the child in us, instantly lowering our defenses. Although we often view other people's actions in the most cynical light, we rarely see the Machiavellian element of a gift, which quite often hides ulterior motives. A gift is the perfect object in which to hide a deceptive move. Number 6. Practice the tactic with caution. Unless you can make the gesture seem sincere and heartfelt, do not play with fire. If people see through it, their disappointed feelings of gratitude and warmth will become the most violent hatred and distrust. And lastly, number 7, it is better to play the rogue. When you have a history of deceit behind you, no amount of honesty, generosity, or kindness will fool people. In fact, it will only call attention to itself. Once people have come to see you as deceitful, to act honest all of a sudden is simply suspicious. Overt deceptiveness will sometimes cover your tracks, even making you admired for the honesty of your dishonesty. Law number 13. Asking for help appeal to people's self-interest. If you need to turn to an ally for help, do not bother to remind him of your past assistance and good deeds. He will find a way to ignore you. Instead, uncover something in your request or in your alliance with him that will benefit him and emphasize it out of all proportion. He will respond enthusiastically when he sees something to be gained for himself. Self-interest is the lever that moves people. The art of asking people for help depends on your ability to understand the person you're dealing with, and not to confuse your needs with theirs. Know that even the most powerful person is locked inside needs of his own, and that if you make no appeal to his self-interest, he merely sees you as a desperate or, at best, a waste of time. What not to do when making your appeal. Number 1. Don't bring up the past. Bringing up the past, whether good or bad, will not help you in your cause. The justice and nobility of your cause will not prevail. Not only is a man not obliged to be grateful, gratitude is often a terrible burden that he gladly discards. It is best to speak pragmatically to pragmatic people. People rarely act against their own interests. Like in the case of the Corcyraeans and the Corinthians, who were at the brink of war with one another. They both wanted to win over the Athenians as an ally, because to do so would surely win the war. Both sides were to send representatives to plead their case to the Athenians. The Corcyra representative could only offer one thing, and that was an alliance of mutual interests to create a formidable force that could intimidate the rival state of Sparta. The representative from Corinth only talked about their past relationship with Athens and went on to list the many services Corinth had performed for Athens and the importance of showing gratitude to one's friends. Needless to say, the Athenians were offended by the Corinthian ambassador by his subtle way of asking them to feel guilty about past generosities. The Athenians could have cared less and allied with the Corcyraeans. Number 2. Don't be trapped in your own wants and desires. Do not start from the assumption that the people you are appealing to have a selfless interest in helping you. Don't talk as if your needs matter to people. They probably could care less, especially referring to larger issues, a great cause or grand emotions such as love and gratitude, when simple everyday realities would have much more appeal. When the Dutch began to arrive in Japan in great numbers, Ieyasu, the Japanese emperor, was much relieved. He needed Europeans for their know-how in guns and navigation, and here at last were Europeans who cared nothing for spreading religion. The Dutch wanted only to trade. Ieyasu swiftly moved to evict the Portuguese, who were desperately trying to convert the Japanese people to Catholicism. From then on, he would only deal with the practical-minded Dutch. Japan and Holland were vastly different cultures, but each shared a timeless and universal concern: self-interest. Number 3. Don't confuse your needs with others. Once you make people see how you can in some way meet their needs or advance their cause, their resistance to your request for help will magically fall away. At each step on the way to acquiring power, you must train yourself to think your way inside the other person's mind, to see their needs and interests, to get rid of the screen of your own feelings that obscure the truth. Master this art and there will be no limits to what you can accomplish. The motivation for most people is superiority. Believe it or not, there are people who are not motivated through cynical self-interests. These are people who thrive on opportunities to display their good heart. They prefer to be able to exercise charity, mercy and justice, which are their ways of feeling superior to you. Because of their superior position, if you ask this person for help, you emphasize their power and position. The only requirement from you is that all of this is done in public. The more public, the better. It is truly their pleasure to give and to be seen giving. They are dying to fund your project, to introduce you to powerful people. This is the wine that intoxicates them. You must have the wisdom to distinguish the differences among powerful people and figure out what makes them tick. When they ooze greed, do not appeal for their charity. When they want to look charitable and noble, do not appeal to their greed. This law is crazy important in everyday tasks, I assure you. At first I had trouble seeing it as well, but then I realized that my friends and even my family tick this way. Of course not always, but if you have a request, appeal to their self-interest. Law number 14. Pose as a friend, work as a spy. Knowing your rival is critical. Use spies to get valuable information that will keep you a step ahead. Better still, play the spy yourself. In polite social encounters, learn to probe. Ask indirect questions to get people to reveal their weaknesses and intentions. There is no occasion that is not an opportunity for artful spying. 5 reasons to secretly put the client staff on your payroll. You will gain some valuable information. You will know their comings and goings, changes in taste and other such tidbits of information that will be priceless. You will appear to be all-knowing because you will be one step ahead of your competition. Your knowledge of your mark can also make you seem charming. So well can you anticipate their desires. And lastly, no one sees the source of your power, and what they cannot see, they cannot fight. But there's also a few risks connected to hiring spies. You have little control over the people who are doing the work. Perhaps they will inaptly expose your spying, and they may secretly turn against you. Therefore, here are 6 tips on the art of spying. Pose as a friend while secretly gathering information. People will think that you genuinely like them and mistake your interest as friendship. Learn to possess the ability to suppress your thoughts in the conversation. Speak only when necessary. Learn to make others talk endlessly about themselves. They will inadvertently reveal their intentions and plans. When you're having a little chat and there's an awkward silence to it, the other person will do everything they can to fill these silences. And doing so, they're likely to say something foolish or even reveal something about themselves that they better not have talked about. Organize social gatherings with people whom you're interested in knowing. This is when most people's guards are down. An example for such a gathering would be you throwing a party where there's lots of free booze, alcohol that is, which totally opens up the barriers for deeper conversation with some people. Stir up people's emotions by contradicting them. In their emotional state, they will reveal all kinds of truths about themselves, truths you can later use against them. Give them a false confession. This is a big one. By pretending to bare your heart to another person, you make them more likely to reveal their own secrets. This can also be a test to see if you can trust a person with your secret and reveal their true character, loyalty, and honesty. This kind of knowledge is often the most valuable to predict future actions. But there's also risks connected to spying directly. People may begin to suspect you're worming secrets out of them under the disguise of conversation. Your search for gems of information cannot be too obvious. Your probing questions will reveal more about yourself and your intentions than about the information you hope to find about them. Information is critical to power, but just as you spy on other people, you must be prepared for them to spy on you. One of the most potent weapons in the battle for information then is giving out false information. By feeding people wrong information then, you gain a potent advantage. While spying gives you a third eye, this information puts out one of your enemy's eyes. A cyclops, he always misses his target. This law might seem a little paranoid, but really just like the rest of the book can seem like everyone's out to get you, and there's only enemies and deceptive, manipulative players in the world. This is hopefully not true, but knowing about these laws, you don't necessarily need to make use of them, but you can easily discover others trying to use it on you, which is very, very helpful. At least that's what I think. Law number 15. Crush your enemy totally. All great leaders since Moses have known that a feared enemy must be crushed completely. Sometimes they've learned this the hard way. If one ember is left alight, no matter how dimly it smolders, a fire will eventually break out. More is lost through stopping halfway than through total annihilation. The enemy will recover and will seek revenge. Crush him, not only in body but in spirit. The law governing fatal antagonisms reads, reconciliation is out of the question. You must exterminate, crush, and deny them the chance to return to haunt you. Such is the case of Xiang Yu and his enemy Liu Pang. Xiang had proven his ruthlessness on many an occasion, but with Liu Pang he acted differently. Every time he had his rival in his hands, something made him hesitate, a fatal sympathy or respect for the man who had once been a friend and comrade in arms. But the moment Xiang made it clear that he intended to do away with Liu, yet failed to accomplish it, he sealed his own doom. Liu would not suffer the same hesitation once the tables were turned. Now Xiang Yu was on the run from Liu, and when he came upon a small group of his own retreating soldiers, he cried out, I hear Liu Pang has offered 1,000 pieces of gold and a fief of 10,000 families for his head. Let me do you a favor. He then slits his own throat and dies. It is not, of course, a question of murder, it is a question of banishment. Sufficiently weakened and then exiled from your world, your enemies are rendered harmless. They have no hope of recovering, insinuating themselves and hurting you, and if they cannot be banished, at least understand that they are plotting against you, and pay no heed to whatever friendliness they feign. But sometimes it is better to let your enemies destroy themselves. Leave your enemy an escape route. A retreat is the ultimate demoralizing defeat. Let them be the agents of their own destruction. The result will be the same. The risk of crushing an enemy is you embitter them so much that they spend years and years plotting revenge. Do not let your guard down, but simply crush them again. Brutal chapter of the book. Now, whatever history looks like, we're not talking about killing people nowadays, right? I hope all of you sociopaths out there understand that. But one real example is you get bullied at school or university, whatever. You got a tall dude who's stronger than you, beating you up and taking your lunch money. What are you gonna do? Are you just going to accept that you're the victim and that you supposedly fit into that role perfectly? You gotta hit them right back. One martial artist, whose name I forgot, has a video on YouTube, I'll link it in the description, where he explains this. I hope you found this resourceful and you're not just going to take a sledgehammer now and attack your boss at work tomorrow, but these are definitely some ideas that you have to consider during war times. Law number 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Too much circulation makes the price go down. The more you're seen and heard from, the more common you appear. If you're already established in a group, temporary withdrawal from it will make you more talked about, even more admired. You must learn when to leave. Create value through scarcity. At the start of an affair, you need to heighten your presence in the eyes of the other. If you absent yourself too early, you may be forgotten. But once your lover's emotions are engaged and the feeling of love has crystallized, absence inflames and excites. Giving no reason for your absence excites gets even more. The other person assumes he or she is at fault. While you are away, the lover's imagination takes flight, and a stimulated imagination cannot help but make love grow stronger. Conversely, when you become too present, too accessible, leaving no room for the imagination, the more you pursue, the less they love you. Man, that's why when I don't write back in a week, she's already nagging and, giving me shit about it. I'm sure you know that. We're busy growing our empire, right? What withdraws, what becomes scarce, suddenly seems to deserve our respect and honor. What stays too long, inundating us with its presence, makes us disdain it. Take the romance of Sir Guillaume de Boulogne and Madame Guillerme de Javiac. I'm just going to call her Guillerme de Javiac. Guillaume was the perfect knight who wrote poetry and songs to Madame Guillerme. She fell deeply in love with him, but because he wanted to feel the ultimate bliss that comes with reconciliation after a quarrel, he feigned great anger with her and left. In order for his plan to work, she would have to be upset with him. But his leaving only made her long for him more, so his plan in essence had backfired. When he saw her again, he drove her away with harsh words and threatening gestures that she vowed never to see him again. He regretted what he had done, so he wrote to Javiac, but the lady would not receive him and ordered her servants to chase him away. Over the next year, Sir Guillaume wrote many letters and poems to her and was miserable without her. She finally forgave him, and this is when he finally experienced the joy that comes with reconciliation after a quarrel. Okay, picking up women in the late Middle Age. What the hell? Absence diminishes minor passions and inflames great ones, as the wine douses a candle and fans a fire. La Rochefoucauld. Here are the 10 games of hide and seek. A strong presence will draw power and attention to you. Shine more brightly than those around you. Too much presence creates the opposite effect. The more you're seen and heard from, the more your value degrades. You must learn to withdraw yourself before you are unconsciously pushed away. Starve the other person of your presence. Force their respect by threatening the possibility that they will lose you for good. By completely withdrawing for a while, you create a kind of death before death. When you come back, it will be as if you had come back from the dead. And lastly, an air of resurrection will cling to you, and people will be relieved at your return. The other side of the coin. This law only applies once a certain level of power has been attained. The need to withdraw only comes after you have established your presence. Leave too early and you do not increase your respect, you are simply forgotten. When you are first entering onto the world stage, create an image that is recognizable, reproducible, and is seen everywhere. Until that status is attained, absence is dangerous. Instead of fanning the flames, it will extinguish them. Law number 17. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. Humans are creatures of habit with an insatiable need to see familiarity in other people's actions. Your predictability gives them a sense of control. Turn the tables. Be deliberately unpredictable. Behavior that seems to have no consistency or purpose will keep them off balance, and they will wear themselves out trying to explain your moves. Taken to an extreme, this strategy can intimidate and terrorize. So here's 5 ways to keep your opponent off balance. Appear to have no clear strategy. Scramble old patterns. Alter your behavior to improvise and overcome the weight of routine and habit. Unsettle those around you to keep the initiative on their side. Strike without warning to make others tremble when they least expect it. To illustrate this law, we will use the game of chess. Chess contains the concentrated essence of life. First, because to win you have to be supremely patient and far-seeing. And second, because the game is built on patterns, whole sequences of moves that have been played before and will be played again, with slight alterations in any one match. Your opponent analyzes the patterns you are playing and uses them to try to foresee your moves. Allowing him nothing predictable to base his strategy on gives you a big advantage. In chess as in life, when people cannot figure out what you're doing, they are kept in a state of terror, waiting, uncertain, confused. It is a device that the powerful have used for centuries. Scrambling your patterns on a day-to-day basis will cause a stir around you and stimulate interest. People will talk about you, ascribe motives and explanations that have nothing to do with the truth, but that keep you constantly in their minds. In the end, the more capricious you appear, the more respect you will garner. Only determinedly subordinate act in a predictable manner. 2 reasons that predictability will work in your favor. 1. It sets up a smokescreen, a comfortable front behind which you can carry on deceptive actions. And second, it allows you on rare occasions to do something completely against the pattern, unsettling your opponent so deeply he will fall to the ground without being pushed. In 1974, Muhammad Ali and George Foreman were scheduled to fight for the World Heavyweight Boxing Championship. In a press conference before the big fight, he said he was going to change his style and punch it out with Foreman. No one, least of all Foreman, believed this for a second. To everyone's amazement, Ali did exactly what he had said he would do. As Foreman waited for him to dance around, Ali went right up to him and slugged it out. He completely upset his opponent's strategy. At a loss, Foreman ended up wearing himself out, not by chasing Ali but by throwing punches wildly and taking more and more counterpunches. Finally, Ali landed a dramatic right cross that knocked out Foreman. The habit of assuming that a person's behavior will fit its previous patterns is so strong that not even Ali's announcement of a strategy change was enough to upset it. Foreman walked into the trap he had been told to expect. Warning: this law, just like many other laws of the book, can backfire on you if not practiced with caution. Unpredictability can work against you sometimes, especially if you are in a subordinate position. There are times when it is better to let people feel comfortable and settled around you than to disturb them. Too much unpredictability will be seen as a sign of indecisiveness or even of some more serious psychic problem. Such power should only be used judiciously. Isolation is dangerous. The world is dangerous and enemies are everywhere. Everyone has to protect themselves. A fortress seems the safest, but isolation exposes you to more dangers than it protects you from. It cuts you off from valuable information, it makes you conspicuous and an easy target. Better to circulate among people, find allies and mingle. You are shielded from your enemies by the crowd. Here's 5 dangers that isolation brings. You lose contact with the sources of your power. You lose your ear for what is happening around you. You lose your sense of proportion. You cut yourself off from the kind of knowledge on which your life depends. You cannot hear what is happening around you, including the plots against you. It becomes harder to break out of your isolation when you choose to. It sinks you deep into its quicksand without your noticing. Compare and contrast the lives of Qin Shi Huangdi, the first emperor of China, and Louis XIV. After outlawing the writings and teachings of the great philosopher Confucius, Shi Huangdi made many enemies and he grew constantly afraid and even paranoid. Louis XIV, on the other hand, very early grasped the truth that for a king to isolate himself is gravely dangerous. The emperor withdrew deeper and deeper into his palace to protect himself, and he slowly lost control of the realm. He slept in a different room every night, and anyone who inadvertently laid eyes on him was instantly beheaded. King Louis's bedroom occupied the literal center of the palace of Versailles, and was the focus of everyone's attention. Due to his absence, Shi Huangdi's eunuchs and ministers enacted political policies without his approval or even his knowledge, and also plotted against him. Louis XIV knew that if he was absent, conspiracies would spring up like mushrooms after rain. Animosities will crystallize into factions and rebellion will break out before he has the time to react. Shi Huang traveled incognito, disguising himself carefully. On one such trip through the provinces, he suddenly died. He died alone, far from his wives, his family, his friends, and his courtiers, accompanied only by a minister and a handful of eunuchs. Some speculate that he was poisoned by the same scheming ministers who encouraged his isolation. Louis XIV, on the opposite, built the Palace of Versailles where everything and everyone's focus was on him. These conditions at Versailles lasted for Louis' entire reign, some 50 years of relative peace and tranquility. Through it all, not a pin dropped without Louis hearing it. Place yourself at the center of activity. You should be aware of everything happening on the street and of anyone who might be hatching plots against you. Do not feel threatened. This is a dangerous way to start becoming paranoid. Do not retreat and close ranks to find security in a kind of fortress. Fight the desire to turn inward. Do not rely on information from a small circle and lose perspective on events around you. Do not lose maneuverability and become an easy target. As in warfare and most games of strategy, isolation often precedes defeat and death. Make yourself more accessible, seek out old allies and make new ones. Force yourself into more and more different circles. If you need time to think, then choose isolation only as a last resort and only in small doses. Be careful to keep your way back into society open. You need to be permeable, able to float in and out of different circles and mix with different types. That kind of mobility and social contact will protect you from plotters who will be unable to keep secrets from you, and from your enemies who will be unable to isolate you from your allies. Always on the move, you mix and mingle in the rooms of the palace, never sitting or settling in one place. No hunter can fix his aim on such a swift-moving creature. Law number 19. Do not offend the wrong person. There are many different kinds of people in the world, and you can never assume that everyone will react to your strategies in the same way. Deceive or outmaneuver some people and they will spend the rest of their lives seeking revenge. They are wolves in lamb's clothing. Choose your victims and opponents carefully. Never offend or deceive the wrong person. Here are the 5 most dangerous and difficult types of people that you will definitely stumble upon at some point in your life. Number 1. The arrogant and proud man. Although he may initially disguise it, this man's touchy pride makes him very dangerous. Any perceived slight will lead to a vengeance of overwhelming violence. You may say to yourself, but I only said such and such at a party, everyone was drunk, it doesn't matter. There is no sanity behind his overreaction, so do not waste time trying to figure him out. If at any point in your dealings with a person you sense as oversensitive with overactive pride, flee, run away. Whatever you're hoping for from this person isn't worth it. Number 2. The hopelessly insecure man. This man is related to the proud and arrogant type, but is less violent and harder to spot. His ego is fragile, his sense of self insecure, and if he feels himself deceived or attacked, the hurt will simmer. He will attack you in bites that will take forever to get big enough for you to notice. If you find you have deceived or harmed such a man, disappear for a long time. Do not stay around him or he will nibble you to death. Number 3. Mr. Suspicion. He sees what he wants to see, usually the worst in other people, and imagines that everyone is after him. Mr. Suspicion is in fact the least dangerous of the three. Genuinely unbalanced, he is easy to deceive, just as Stalin himself was constantly deceived. Play on his suspicious nature to get him to turn against other people. But if you do become the target of his suspicions, watch out. Number 4. The serpent with a long memory. If hurt or deceived, this man will show no anger on the surface. He will calculate and wait. Then, when he is in a position to turn the tables, he will exact a revenge marked by a cold-blooded shrewdness. Recognize this man by his calculation and cunning in the different areas of his life. He is usually cold and unaffectionate. Be doubly careful of this snake, and if you have somehow injured him, either crush him completely or get him out of your sight. Number 5. The plain, unassuming and often unintelligent man. The danger with this man is not that he will harm you or seek revenge, but merely that he will waste your time, energy, resources and even your sanity in trying to deceive him. Have a test ready for him, a joke or a story. If his reaction is utterly literal, this is a type you're dealing with. Continue at your own risk. 5 final words of caution. 1. In judging and measuring your opponent, never rely on your instincts. You will make the greatest mistakes of all if you rely on such inexact indicators. Nothing can substitute for gathering concrete knowledge. Study and spy on your opponent for however long it takes. This will pay off in the long run. Number 2. Never trust appearances. Anyone with a serpent's heart can use a show of kindness to cloak it. A person who is blustery on the outside is often really a coward. Learn to see through appearances and their contradictions. Never trust the version that people give of themselves. It is utterly unreliable. 3. If you want to turn people down, it is best to do so politely and respectfully, even if you feel their request is impudent or their offer ridiculous. Never reject them with an insult until you know them better. You may be dealing with a Genghis Khan. 4. Some people's insecurity and ego fragility cannot tolerate the slightest offense. To see if you're dealing with such a type, test them first. Make, say, a mild joke at their expense. A confident person will laugh. An overly insecure one will react as if personally insulted. If you suspect you're dealing with this type, find another victim. Number 5. Swallow the impulse to offend. Even if the other person seems weak, the satisfaction is meager compared to the danger that someday he or she will be in a position to hurt you. Alright, that's almost it for this law. Let me elaborate more on why I chose this Hitler figure in the first part. I know it's not the best example, and I also know it's not the only reason he blamed the Jewish people. He played the blame game, propaganda, people were pissed at losing the First World War and having to pay reparations, having scarce resources and so on, and he made the Jewish people responsible for it. But before all that, Hitler was living on the streets trying his luck as an artist. Yes, Adolf Hitler did paintings, and when he reached out to museums and art shows, he was deeply hurt. A lot of these organizations were owned by Jewish people who he took personal offense to. Never offend the wrong person. Law number 20. Do not commit to anyone. It is the fool who always rushes to take sides. Do not commit to any side or cause but yourself. By maintaining your independence, you become the master of others, playing people against one another, making them pursue you. Do not commit to anyone but be courted by all. If you allow people to feel they possess you to any degree, you lose all power over them. By not committing your affections, they will only try harder to win you over. Stay aloof and gain the power that comes from their attention and frustrated desire. Play the virgin queen. Give them hope but never satisfaction. The aura of power grows with time. You must learn the tricks that will enhance your image, emanate mystery and desirability, never discouraging anyone's hopes but never yielding. When you hold yourself back, you incur not anger but a kind of respect. You instantly seem powerful because you make yourself ungraspable, rather than succumbing to the group or to the relationship, as most people do. As your reputation for independence grows, more and more people will come to desire you, wanting to be the one who gets you to commit. The moment you commit, the magic is gone. People will try all kinds of underhanded methods to get you to commit. They will give you gifts, shower you with favors, all to put you under obligation. Accept the gifts and favors if you so desire, but be careful to maintain your inner aloofness. You cannot inadvertently allow yourself to feel obligated to anyone. Encourage the attention, stimulate their interest, but do not commit at any cost. The goal is not to put people off or to make it seem like you are incapable of commitment. You have to bend to their attention occasionally, then, but never too far. Desire is like a virus. If we see that someone is desired by other people, we tend to find this person desirable as well. Like the Virgin Queen, you need to stir the pot, excite interest, and lure people with the possibility of having you. Do not commit to anyone, stay above the fray. Do not let people drag you into their petty fights and squabbles. Seem interested and supportive, but find a way to remain neutral. Let others do the fighting while you stand back, watch and wait. When the fighting parties are good and tired, they will be ripe for the picking. You can make it a practice, in fact, to stir up quarrels between other people and then offer to mediate, gaining power as the go-between. Master your emotions. Do not allow whatever compassion and pity you possess to suck you in. You must seem interested in other people's problems, even sometimes appear to take their side. You must maintain your inner energy and sanity by keeping your emotions disengaged. Never let your interest in their affairs and petty squabbles go beyond the surface. Give them gifts, listen with a sympathetic look, even occasionally play the charmer, but inwardly keep them all at arm's length. By refusing to commit and thus maintaining your autonomy, you retain the initiative. Your moves stay a matter of your own choosing, not defensive reactions to the push and pull of those around you. Pay attention, however. Both parts of this law will turn against you if you take it too far. The game proposed here is delicate and difficult. If you play too many parties against one another, they will see through the maneuver and will gang up on you. If you keep your growing numbers of suitors waiting too long, you will inspire not desire but distrust. People will start to lose interest. Eventually, you may find it worthwhile to commit to one side, if only for appearance's sake, to prove you are capable of attachment. Even then, however, the key will be to maintain your inner independence, to keep yourself from getting emotionally involved. Preserve the unspoken option of being able to leave at any moment and reclaim your freedom if the side you are allied with starts to collapse. The friends you made while you were being courted will give you plenty of places to go once you jump ship. Casanova, one of the greatest seducers in history, used this law to make himself more desired by women when he'd pursue more than one at a time. They wanted to win him over, outdoing all other women in the process. He was the prize they would win in this competition. A person having more than a few options can care less if one of the options falls away. Law number 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. No one likes feeling stupider than the next person. The trick then is to make your victims feel smart, and not just smart, but smarter than you are. Once convinced of this, they will never suspect that you may have ulterior motives. Here's 6 ways to appear more stupid than the mock. Never inadvertently insult or impugn a person's brain power. Subliminally reassure people that they are more intelligent than you are. Convince them that you are a bit of a moron and you can run rings around them. The feeling of intellectual superiority you give them will disarm their suspicion muscles. Given how important the idea of intelligence is to most people's vanity, make people feel they are more sophisticated than you are and their guard will calm down. The swine and the tiger. The Chinese have a phrase, masquerading as a swine to kill the tiger. This refers to an ancient hunting technique in which the hunter clothes himself in the hide and snout of a pig and mimics its grunting. Masquerading as a swine works wonders on those who, like tigers, are arrogant and overconfident. The easier they think it is to prey on you, the more easily you can turn the tables. This trick is also useful if you're ambitious yet find yourself low in the hierarchy. Appearing less intelligent than you are, even a bit of a fool, is the perfect disguise. Look like a harmless pig and no one will believe you harbor dangerous ambitions. They may even promote you since you seem so likable and subservient. In general then, always make people believe they are smarter and more sophisticated than you are. They will keep you around because you make them feel better about themselves, and the longer you're around, the more opportunities you will have to deceive them. The mighty tiger thinks a pig is coming his way and lets it get close, savoring the prospect of an easy meal. But it is the hunter who has the last laugh. Intelligence can pay off. To reveal the true nature of your intelligence rarely pays. You should get in the habit of downplaying it at all times. If people inadvertently learn the truth that you are actually much smarter than you look, they will admire you more for being discreet than for making your brilliance show. At the start of your climb to the top, of course, you cannot play too stupid. You may want to let your bosses know in a subtle way that you are smarter than the competition around you. As you climb the ladder, however, you should to some degree try to dampen your brilliance. There is one situation where it pays to do the opposite, when you can cover up a deception with a show of intelligence. In matters of smarts, as in most things, appearances are what count. If you seem to have authority and knowledge, people will believe what you say. This can be very useful in getting you out of a scrape. Law number 23. Concentrate your forces. Conserve your forces and energies by keeping them concentrated at their strongest point. You gain more by finding a rich mine and mining it deeper than by flitting from one shallow mine to another. Intensity defeats extensity every time. When looking for sources of power to elevate you, find the one key patron, the fat cow who will give you milk for a long time to come. Maybe you can relate to the following. Do you find yourself in a state of total distraction and diffusion, hardly able to keep your mind in one direction before you are pulled in 1,000 others? The modern world's level of conflict is higher than ever and you internalize it in your life. The solution is a form of retreat inside yourself to the past, to more concentrated forms of thought and action. Single-mindedness of purpose, total concentration on the goal, then use these qualities against people less focused. Such an arrow will find its mark every time and overwhelm the enemy. This is what happened to ancient Athens, which lusted for the faraway island of Sicily and ended up losing its empire. The Romans stretched the boundaries of their empire to encompass vast territories. In doing so, they increased their vulnerability and the chances of invasion from yet another barbarian tribe. Their useless expansion led their empire into oblivion. Concentrate on a single goal, a single task, and beat it into submission. You will need help from other people, usually those who are more powerful than you. More energy is saved and more power attained when you affix yourself to a single appropriate source of power. Find out who controls the operation. Find out the real director behind the scenes. Power itself always exists in concentrated forms. In any organization, it is inevitable for a small group to hold the strings, and often it is not those with the titles. In the game of power, only the fool flails about without fixing his target. You cannot hit two targets with one arrow. If your thoughts stray, you miss your enemy's heart. Mind and arrow must become one. Two dangers in concentration. When fighting a stronger enemy, concentrating your forces only makes you an easier target. Better to dissolve into the scenery and frustrate your enemy with the elusiveness of your presence. Tying yourself to a single source of power has one preeminent danger. If that person dies, leaves, or falls from grace, you suffer. In cases when you may need protection then, it is often wise to entwine yourself around several sources of power. Such a move would be especially prudent in periods of great tumult and violent change, or when your enemies are numerous. The more patrons and masters you serve, the less risk you run if one of them falls from power. Such dispersion will even allow you to play one off against the other. Even if you concentrate on the single source of power, you still must practice caution and prepare for the day when your master or patron is no longer there to help you. Finally, being too single-minded in purpose can make you an intolerable bore, especially in the arts of power. 24. Play the perfect courtier. The perfect courtier thrives in a world where everything revolves around power and political dexterity. He has mastered the art of indirection. He flatters, yields to superiors, and asserts power over others in the most oblique and graceful manner. Learn and apply the laws of courtiership and there will be no limit to how far you can rise in the court. In the past, the court garnered around the ruler and had many functions. Besides keeping the ruler amused, it was a way to solidify the hierarchy of royalty, nobility, and the upper classes, and to keep the nobility both subordinate and close to the ruler, so that he could keep an eye on them. The court serves power in many ways, but most of all it glorifies the ruler, providing him with a microcosmic world that must struggle to please him. Alexander the Great, conqueror of the Mediterranean basin and the Middle East through to India, was mentored and tutored by the great Aristotle. He complained that on his long campaigns he could not discuss philosophical matters with anyone worthy of such a conversation. Aristotle suggested Alexander best take Callisthenes, a former pupil of Aristotle and a promising philosopher, with him on his journeys. But Callisthenes believed in pure philosophy, free from censorship. He would speak his mind instead of tailoring his words, carefully as Aristotle had taught him. One day Callisthenes dared offend Alexander one too many times and was put to death. Being honest all the time will make more enemies than you can count. Criticism is to be given with extreme caution, best avoided, or given indirectly as in the next example. During the Han Dynasty 2000 years ago, Chinese scholars compiled a series of writings called the 21 Histories, an official biography of each dynasty. In each history, the scholars would write down unusual events, such as earthquakes and floods, that could be historically verified, but among the listings one would find bizarre manifestations of two-headed sheep, geese flying backward, and stars suddenly appearing in different parts of the sky. The emperor that the world revolved around was not easy to counsel. Many servants would find themselves fall out of favor, lose their positions and even lives. When you criticize someone of great power, in his anger he sees the one criticizing, not the criticism itself. For that matter, the Chinese scholars came up with a way to hide themselves off the emperor's eyes and advise him safely. Inserting sightings of strange phenomena into the court chronicles was the only way to warn him. The emperor would read of moons out of orbit and realize he was being cautioned. He was unbalancing the universe. Jean-Baptiste Isabey had become the unofficial painter of the Napoleonic court. He was to capture the historic events taking place after Napoleon's defeat and imprisonment in an epic painting. Talleyrand, main negotiator of the French, and the Duke of Wellington, the main negotiator of the English, both approached him with the same request: to be the center of attention and to be in the very center of the painting. He created a painting that honored and satisfied both sides. On one side, the Duke enters the room and all eyes are turned toward him, making him the center of attention. In the very center of the painting, meanwhile, sits Talleyrand. A man who knows the court is master of his gestures, of his eyes, and of his face. He is profound, impenetrable. He dissimulates bad offices, smiles at his enemies, controls his irritation, disguises his passions, belies his heart, speaks and acts against his feelings. Jean de la Bruyère. Law number 25. Recreate yourself. Do not accept the roles that society foists on you. Recreate yourself by forging a new identity that commands attention and never bores the audience. Be the master of your own image rather than letting others define it for you. Incorporate dramatic devices into your public gestures and actions. Your power will be enhanced and your character will seem larger than life. 3 ways to be the consummate chameleon. You must learn to enlarge your actions through dramatic techniques such as surprise, suspense, the creation of sympathy, and symbolic identification. You must be constantly aware of your audience, of what will please them and what will bore them. And you must arrange to place yourself at the center, to command attention and never to be upstaged at any cost. Because of his own obsessive interest in drama, Julius Caesar was perhaps the first public figure to understand the vital link between power and theater. He sublimated this interest by making himself an actor and director of the world stage. Even while dying, he kept his sense of drama. Drawing the top of his gown over his face, he let go of the cloth's lower parts so that it draped his legs, allowing him to die covered and decent. According to the Roman historian Suetonius, his final words to his old friend Brutus, who was about to deliver a second blow, were in Greek and as if rehearsed for the end of a play. "You too, my child." Understand the following: the world wants to assign you a role in life, and once you accept that role, you are doomed. Your power is limited to the tiny amount allotted to the role you have selected or have been forced to assume. An actor, on the other hand, plays many roles. Enjoy the protean power, and if it is beyond you, at least forge a new identity, one of your own making, one that has no boundaries assigned to it by an envious and resentful world. This act of defiance is Promethean. It makes you responsible for your own creation. Your new identity will protect you from the world precisely because it is not you. It is a costume you put on and take off. You need not take it personally, and your new identity sets you apart, gives you theatrical presence. Those in the back rows can see you and hear you. Those in the front rows marvel at your audacity. The Promethean task of the powerful is to take control of the process, to stop allowing others that ability to limit and mold them. Remake yourself into a character of power. Working on yourself like clay should be one of your greatest and most pleasurable life tasks. It makes you in essence an artist creating yourself. In fact, the idea of self-creation comes from the world of art. Steps in the process of self-creation is you must be self-conscious, being aware of yourself as an actor and taking control of your appearance and emotions. And second, you must learn self-control. Adopt the plasticity of the actor who can mold his or her face to the emotion required. And third, creation of a memorable character. A character that compels attention, that stands out above the other players on the stage. Good drama, however, needs more than an interesting appearance or a single standout moment. Drama takes place over time. It is an unfolding event. Rhythm and timing are critical. One of the most important elements in the rhythm of drama is suspense. The key to keeping the audience on the edge of their seats is letting events unfold slowly, then speeding them up at the right moment, according to a pattern and tempo that you control. Besides covering a multitude of sins, good drama can also confuse and deceive your enemy. Other dramatic effects for your repertoire include the beau geste, an action at a climactic moment that symbolizes your triumph or your boldness. You must also appreciate the importance of stage entrances and exits. Remember that overacting can be counterproductive. It is another way of spending too much effort trying to attract attention. It is less what you do that matters than how you do it. Your gracefulness and imposing stillness on the social stage count for more than overdoing your part and moving around too much. Finally, learn to play many roles, to be whatever the moment requires. Adapt your mask to the situation. Be Protean in the faces you wear. Law number 26. Keep your hands clean. You must seem a paragon of civility and efficiency. Your hands are never soiled by mistakes and nasty deeds. Maintain such a spotless appearance by using others as scapegoats and cat's paws to disguise your involvement. Conceal your mistakes. Have a scapegoat around to take the blame. Our good name and reputation depend more on what we conceal than on what we reveal. Everyone makes mistakes, but those who are truly clever manage to hide them and to make sure someone else is blamed. A convenient scapegoat should always be kept around for such moments. Understanding the workings of power and the importance of appearances, shop around for the most convenient head and have it served up immediately. Occasional mistakes are inevitable. Handle them. People of power are undone not by the mistakes they make, but by the way they deal with them. The mistake does not vanish with an apology. It deepens and festers. It's better to cut it off instantly, distract attention from yourself, and focus attention on a convenient scapegoat. Do not give people time to ponder your responsibility or your possible incompetence. The bloody sacrifice of the scapegoat seems a barbaric relic of the past, but the practice lives on to this day, if indirectly and symbolically. Since power depends on appearances, and those in power must seem never to make mistakes, the use of scapegoats is as popular as ever. Besides conveniently shifting blame, a scapegoat can serve as a warning to others. Example of Cesare Borgia. Robert Greene took the following right out of Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince. Cesare Borgia used the scapegoat to gain control of large parts of Italy. He gave Ramiro di Orco, a cruel and vigorous man, absolute powers. With extreme violence, he would enforce Cesare's rule with brutal justice and grow hated by the local population. To guard his own reputation, to avoid being associated with Orco's gruesome actions, to calm the people's scream for revenge, he publicly stated that he had in no way ordered Orco to do what he did, and imprisoned, beheaded, and blamed him. Cesare had painted a pleasing picture for the public, who not only wished Orco's death, but that his cruelty be repaid. Next to his headless body, Orco's head was spiked up on a pike. To quote Achilles fighting Hector at the temple of the sun god, "Why would I kill you now, young prince, if no one sees how you fall?" Cesare built a spectacle for everyone to see. Not only can you use others as scapegoats, but you can make them your cat's paw. In the fable, the monkey grabs the paw of his friend the cat and uses his paw to get it to fish chestnuts out of the fire, so as to get the nuts without hurting himself. If there is something unpleasant or unpopular that needs to be done, it is far too risky for you to do the work yourself. You need a cat's paw, someone who does the dirty work for you. The cat's paw grabs what you need, hurts whom you need hurt, and keeps people from noticing that you are the one responsible. Let someone else be the executioner, or the bearer of bad news, while you bring only joy and glad tidings. Cleopatra was more than only a woman. She was a queen, an empress, a goddess. Her appearance would never be the same, only ever wearing the nicest robes and accessoires. Probably one of the most dangerous seductresses in history. Like many women still today, she used her feminine qualities to get men to do as she desired. At the age of 10, she witnessed her father Ptolemy XII get overthrown and banished by her elder sisters. Berenice emerged as the leader of the rebellion, had her other sisters imprisoned, and her own husband murdered to secure her own rule. This extreme violence on one of her own made the public resent her, and 4 years later Ptolemy could return, beheading the elder sisters. In 51 BC, Ptolemy died and left 4 remaining children as heirs. The eldest son, the 11-year-old Ptolemy XIII, married the elder sister Cleopatra. Incest was common in order to keep royal positions and thus power in the family. In a fight for power, Cleopatra was exiled. None dared to make the same mistake as Berenice by killing one of their own. It would inevitably shed a dark light on the murderer. Therefore Cleopatra bided her time and schemed. When she heard of Julius Caesar's plan to make Egypt a Roman colony, she arranged to see him, seducing and thereafter using him as a tool to destroy her siblings and other enemies to get the throne for herself. In 41 BC, she would use the same tactics on Mark Antony. She was able to reduce both of these very powerful and dangerous men to her cat's paws, doing exactly what she wanted them to. And that's it for this law. However, there is an additional lesson for men to be learned here. Even a great man such as Julius Caesar was tamed by feminine charm. Be wary of the Cleopatras in today's society. Their numbers have grown enormously, while the odds for men to become a Caesar are constantly diminishing. As always, thanks for watching. Law number 27. Create a cult. Play on people's need to believe. People have an overwhelming desire to believe in something. Become the focal point of such desire by offering them a cause, a new faith to follow. Keep your words vague, but full of promise. Emphasize enthusiasm over rationality and clear thinking. Give your new disciples rituals to perform. Ask them to make sacrifices on your behalf. In the absence of organized religion and grand causes, your new belief system will bring you untold power. The gimmicks of the charlatans may seem quaint today, but there are thousands of charlatans among us still, using the same tried and true methods their predecessors refined centuries ago, only changing the names of their elixirs and modernizing the look of their cults. We find these latter-day charlatans in all areas of life: business, fashion, politics, art. Many of them perhaps are following in the charlatan tradition without having any knowledge of its history, but you can be more systematic and deliberate. Simply follow the 5 steps of cult making that our charlatan ancestors perfected over the years. 5 ways to create a cult. Keep it vague, keep it simple. First, attract attention. This you should not do through actions which are too clear and readable, but through words, which are hazy and deceptive. Your initial speeches, conversations, and interviews must include the promise of something great and transformative, the other a total vagueness. Second, emphasize the visual and the sensual over the intellectual. Once people have begun to gather around you, 2 dangers will present themselves. A. Boredom. Boredom will make people go elsewhere. B. Skepticism will allow them the distance to think rationally about whatever it is you're offering, blowing away the mist you have artfully created and revealing your ideas for what they are. You need to amuse the bored then and ward off the cynics. Use theater or other devices of its kind. Surround yourself with luxury, dazzle your followers with visual splendor, and fill their eyes with spectacle. Not only will this keep them from seeing the ridiculousness of your ideas, the holes in your belief system, it will also attract more attention, more followers. And borrow the forms of organized religion to structure the group. 5 ways to organize your cult-like following. Find a way both elevating and comforting. Create rituals for your followers. Organize them into a hierarchy, ranking them in grades of sanctity and giving them names and titles that resound with religious overtones. Ask them for sacrifices that will fill your coffers and increase your power. To emphasize your gatherings' quasi-religious nature, talk and act like a prophet. You are a priest, a guru, a sage, a shaman, or any other word that hides your real power in the midst of religion. Scientology. Disguise your source of income. Your group has grown, and you have structured it in a church-like form. Your coffers are beginning to fill with your followers' money, yet you must never be seen as hungry for money and the power it brings. It is at this moment that you must disguise the source of your income. Never reveal that your wealth actually comes from your followers' pockets. Instead, make it seem to come from the truth of your methods. Followers will copy your each and every move in the belief that it will bring them the same results, and their imitative enthusiasm will blind them to the charlatan nature of your wealth. Set up an us versus them dynamic. The group is now large and thriving, a magnet attracting more and more particles. To keep your followers united, you must now do what all religions and belief systems have done. Create an us versus them dynamic. Make sure your followers believe they are part of an exclusive club, unified by a bond of common goals. Manufacture the notion of a devious enemy out to ruin you. There is a force of non-believers that will do anything to stop you. If you have no enemies, invent one. Given a straw man to react against, your followers will tighten and cohere. But be warned, if at any moment the group sees through you, you will find yourself facing not one deceived soul but an angry crowd that will tear you to pieces as avidly as it once followed you. Law number 28. Enter action with boldness. If you are unsure of a course of action, do not attempt it. Your doubts and hesitations will infect your execution. Timidity is dangerous. Better to enter with boldness. Any mistakes you commit through audacity are easily corrected with more audacity. Everyone admires the bold, no one honors the timid. This is the story of Ivan the Terrible. In 1533, Vasily, the Grand Duke of Moscow and ruler of a semi-united Russia, proclaimed his 3-year-old son Ivan IV as his successor. Until Ivan reached his majority, however, his mother Helena would have the ruling hand. She sought out help from her trusted friend Prince Ivan Obolensky to help her rule. The Boyar clan, the opposite party, poisoned Helena and had Obolensky starved to death in prison. At the age of 8, Ivan was now a despised orphan. The boyars would treat him roughly, dress him up in robes with a scepter, mocking him, beating and banishing his only friend. He'd roam the palace, ill-clothed and hiding from the boy. On December 29, 1543, Ivan turned 13 and asked Prince Andrei Shuisky, the head of the boyars, to come to his room. When the prince arrived, the room was filled with palace guards. Ivan pointed with his finger, ordering Andrei's arrest, death, and that his body be thrown to the bloodhounds in the royal canal. Over the next few days, Ivan had all of Andrei's close associates arrested and banished. The boyars now stood in mortal terror of the young future Ivan the Terrible, who had planned and waited for 5 years to take revenge with this one swift and bold act that would secure his power for decades to come. Law number 29. Plan all the way to the end. The ending is everything. Plan all the way to it, taking into account all the possible consequences, obstacles and twists of fortune that might reverse your hard work and give the glory to others. By planning to the end, you will not be overwhelmed by circumstances and more. Bismarck had planned his campaign in its entirety all along. Instead of expanding further, he would now, as the Prince of a Greater Prussia, focus on securing the newly acquired lands. What good is it to have the greatest dream in the world if others reap the benefits and the glory? Never lose your head over a vague, open-ended dream. Plan to the end. The only solution is to plan for the long run. Foresee the future with as much clarity as the gods on Mount Olympus, who look through the clouds and see the ends of all things. According to the cosmology of the ancient Greeks, the gods were thought to have complete vision into the future. They saw everything to come, right down to the intricate details. Men, on the other hand, were seen as victims of fate, trapped in the moment and their emotions, unable to see beyond immediate dangers. Heroes such as Odysseus, who were able to look beyond the present and plan several steps ahead, seemed to defy fate, to approximate the gods in their ability to determine the future. This comparison is still valid. Those among us who think further ahead and patiently bring their plans to fruition seem to have a godlike power. Law number 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. Your actions must seem natural and executed with ease. All the toil and practice that go into them, and also all the clever tricks, must be concealed. When you act, act effortlessly, as if you could do much more. Avoid the temptation of revealing how hard you work. It only raises questions. Teach no one your tricks, or they will be used against you. You will often have to use tricks and ingenuity to create your effects, but your audience must never suspect the work or the thinking that has gone into them. Nature does not reveal its tricks, and what imitates nature by appearing effortless approximates nature's power. In 16th century Japan, Sen no Rikyu was the preferred tea master. Although not from a noble family, Emperor Hideyoshi found him to be an important advisor on aesthetic and even political matters. Rikyu's secret was to appear natural, concealing the effort behind his work. One evening, while having tea at a friend's house, Rikyu saw his host go outside, hold up a lantern in the darkness, cut a lemon off a tree and bring it. This charmed Rikyu. The host needed a relish for the dish he was serving and had spontaneously gone outside to get one. But when the man offered the lemon with some Osaka rice cake, Rikyu realized that he had planned creating this effect of beauty he found so desirable. The gesture no longer seemed spontaneous. It was a way for the host to prove his cleverness, but he had accidentally revealed how hard he was trying. Rikyu politely declined the cake, excused himself and left. To Sen no Rikyu, the sudden appearance of something naturally, almost accidentally graceful was the height of beauty. This beauty came without warning and seemed effortless. Nature created such things by its own laws and processes, but men had to create their effects through labor and contrivance. And when they showed the effort of producing the effect was spoiled. Secret practice makes perfect. You must research and practice endlessly before appearing in public, on stage or anywhere else. Never expose the sweat and labor behind your poise. Some think such exposure will demonstrate their diligence and honesty, but it actually just makes them look weaker, as if they weren't really up to the job. Keep your effort and your tricks to yourself, and you seem to have the grace and ease of a god. The Book of the Courtier by Baldassare Castiglione speaks of sprezzatura, the capacity to make the difficult seem easy. It is relevant to all forms of power, for power depends vitally on appearances and the illusions you create. Your public actions are like artworks. They must have visual appeal, create anticipation, and even entertain. When you reveal the inner workings of your creation, you become just one more mortal among others. What is understandable is not awe-inspiring. We tell ourselves we could do as well if we had the money and time. Avoid the temptation of showing how clever you are. Instead, conceal the mechanisms of your cleverness. Do not give people ideas they can use against you because you can't see the advantages of keeping silent. Resist the temptation to want your vanity gratified by having your hard work and cleverness applauded. Do not vie for sympathy for the hours it has taken to reach your point of artistry. And finally, learn to control this propensity to blab, for its effect is often the opposite of what you expected. The more mystery surrounds your actions, the more awesome your power seems. You appear to be the only one who can do what you do, and the appearance of having an exclusive gift is immensely powerful. And second, because you achieve your accomplishments with grace and ease, people believe that you could always do more if you tried harder. This elicits not only admiration, but a touch of fear. Your powers are untapped, no one can fathom their limits. Word to the wise. There are also times when revealing the inner workings of your projects can provide worthwhile. It all depends on your audience's taste, and on the times in which you operate. As long as the partial disclosure of tricks and techniques is carefully planned, rather than the result of an uncontrollable need to blab. It is the ultimate in cleverness. It gives the audience the illusion of being superior and involved, even while much of what you do remains concealed from them. Law number 31. Get others to play with the cards you deal. The best deceptions are the ones that seem to give the other person a choice. Your victims feel they are in control, but are actually your puppets. Give people options that come out in your favor, whichever one they choose. Force them to make choices between the lesser of two evils, both of which serve your purpose. Put them on the horns of a dilemma. They are gored wherever they turn. Ivan the Terrible had to confront an unpleasant reality. The country desperately needed reform, but he lacked the power to push it through. The greatest limit to his authority came from the boyars, the Russian princely class that dominated the country and terrorized the peasantry. In 1553, at the age of 23, Ivan fell ill. Lying in bed and nearing his death, he asked the boyars to swear allegiance to his son as the new Tsar. Some hesitated, some refused, and Ivan saw that the boyars could not be reasoned with. When he recovered, he did not forget that valuable lesson. The boyars defected to Poland and Lithuania, the latter by one of Ivan's closest friends, Andrei Kurbsky, who became Ivan's greatest enemy. Not only the boyars caused him grief, Russia's vast size made it a nightmare to defend. Whatever direction Ivan would have turned, he'd leave his back wide open for a stab. December 3rd, 1564, Ivan had left the capital to a nearby village, leaving the Tsar's treasures and provisions behind without any explanation. Moscow's population feared that Ivan had left them behind, to be slaughtered by the boyars. As a result, they begged the Tsar to come back.
Please, Tsar, please, come back and rule us again.
Blaming the boyars for their betrayal. Ivan listened, but would not change his mind. A few days later, the begging had not stopped, and he gave them a choice. A choice. In the same way the Godfather gave the choice of either signing the contract or getting shot in the head. What was it? Either your name comes on the paper or your brain or something like that. Ivan would either rule as a dictator or not at all, leaving them vulnerable for whoever pleased to take the throne. They accepted his terms, and could no longer rebel against the dictatorship they had chosen. This is important. They had made the choice. Words like freedom, options, and choice evoke a power of possibility far beyond the reality of the benefits they entail. When examined closely, the choices we have in the marketplace, in elections, in our jobs, tend to have noticeable limitations. They are often a matter of choice simply between A and B, with the rest of the alphabet out of the picture. As long as the faintest mirage of choice flickers on, we rarely focus on the missing options. We choose to believe that the game is fair and that we have our freedom. We prefer not to think too much about the depth of our liberty to choose. We are unwilling to probe the smallness of our choices that stems from the fact that too much freedom creates a kind of anxiety. The phrase unlimited options sounds infinitely promising, but unlimited options would actually paralyze us and cloud our ability to choose. Our limited range of choices comforts us. Appear to give options where there are none. This is what the law is about. As long as people feel they've been able to make their own decision between options considering the pros and cons of them all, they will behave in a more positive manner, complying with what you want. Law number 32. Play to people's fantasies. The truth is often avoided because it is ugly and unpleasant. Never appeal to truth and reality unless you are prepared for the anger that comes from disenchantment. Life is so harsh and distressing that people who can manufacture romance or conjure up fantasy are like oases in the desert. Everyone flocks them. There is great power in tapping into the fantasies of the masses. Such is the power of the fantasies that take root in us, especially in times of scarcity and decline. People rarely believe that their problems arise from their own misdeeds and stupidity. Someone or something out there is to blame. The other, the world, the gods, and so salvation comes from the outside as well. To gain power, you must be a source of pleasure for those around you, and pleasure comes from playing to people's fantasies. Never promise a gradual improvement through hard work. Rather promise the moon, the great and sudden transformation, the pot of gold, aka the lose 16 pounds in a week diet, the 6-minute abs, the 4-hour work week, become a millionaire overnight, and the congratulations, you're our millionth visitor, you won an iPad pop-up. It appeals to us so much because the marketers behind these know our fantasies too well. No disrespect to Tim Ferriss, I love this guy, I will certainly take on his books as well. Anyways. 1570, Venice lost the valuable island Cyprus to the Turks. Once one of the wealthiest of places, Venice found itself in poverty. Thinking of ways to turn the economy around, Venice got notice of a man called Il Brigadino, an alchemist who could turn worthless objects into gold with a secret substance. This man would be the solution. He was invited to reside in Venice at the expense of the state's treasures. Il Brigadino would have gold coins clinking in his hands, accompanied by 2 dogs at all times. His palace the state provided would have golden plates, golden watches, buttons and whatnot. Everyone was pleased to see this magical man in their neighborhood. They would buy coal and books on alchemy, learning how to do it themselves, would not be concerned about the practice. Il Brigadino himself. The state became impatient, some advising not to push him over the edge. So Il Brigadino gave a demonstration, creating gold dust out of a mineral in his hands for everyone to see. After a while the doubts grew and Il Brigadino explained he could double all the gold right away, but if they waited for 7 years the gold would multiply many times more. A part of the city formed an angry mob, choosing not to believe the sorcery anymore. Il Brigadino stated they had betrayed him and left Venice, continuing his deception in different areas, living like a noble prince. What the people had not noticed, of course, was the little tube of glass he had hidden in his sleeve that poured the gold dust. His image, his actions, his bold appearance, the fact that he was wanted by other states had set Il Brigadino's reputation as a true alchemist in stone. People wanted to believe so badly they threw away all rational thought and like little children believed in the tooth fairy, preferring not to see the truth behind this charlatan-like figure. Here's my perspective. Ironically, Il Brigadino, or by his real name Cypriot Mamugna, did know how to turn something into gold. Though the gold would only be for himself, and the ingredients were not objects that you can touch with your hands, but people's fantasies and beliefs. Does that make him any less of an alchemist? What is there more profitable than a person's wishes, dreams and fantasies paired with strong belief? Once we choose to believe something, we will stick with it, because we rationalize our actions. Not to do so would be like betraying our own judgment, and if we cannot rely on our past decisions, that would mean confronting the sad and ugly truth. It would be too painful to admit we have been fooled, we have made bad, wrong, poor decisions. We followed a cause led by a fraud who took our money. It's too much of a shame. Sadly, this behavior, this utter denial and justification of our wrongdoings, sticks with so many people for their entire lives. Once we choose to pursue our career ladder by traditional means in slavery, the chain around our neck being a tie, we come to despise everything else. We cannot believe in entrepreneurialism being real, being an option, because if it was, we'd get our hopes up, and we're afraid. very afraid of that. With each year that goes by, we reinforce these ideas. Law number 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. Everyone has a weakness, a gap in the castle wall. That weakness is usually insecurity, an uncontrollable emotion or need. It can also be a small secret pleasure. Either way, once found, it is a thumbscrew you can turn to your advantage. One of the most important things to realize about people is that they all have a weakness, some part of their psychological armor that will not resist, that will blend to your will if you find it and push on it. Some people wear their weaknesses openly, others disguise them. Those who disguise them are often the ones most effectively undone through that one chink in their armor. In 1615, the 30-year-old Bishop of Luçon, later known as Richelieu, turned to the throne of 15-year-old King Louis XIII, and to the Queen Mother Marie de Medici, who sat beside Louis as the regent, ruling France until her son reached his majority. Everyone expected Richelieu to flatter and charm the king, but instead he gave words of admiration to the queen, who he knew loved to get attention from men. Her lover, Concino Concini, an Italian courtier, was her favorite. Therefore he treated him as if he were the king himself. However, Louis XIII was underestimated. In one blow he killed off his mother's lover, Concini, and imprisoned his associates. Richelieu questioned his strategy. Had he done the right thing? He chose to stand beside the queen, who was now a virtual prisoner, shut up in the Louvre. He served as a liaison between the queen and the king. For his loyalty, the queen empowered him to the rank of cardinal, and pleaded to her son not to get rid of Richelieu, whom he despised. Later on, the king would take Richelieu's advice to the point of depending on him, just as the queen was depending on him. He stopped serving the queen and focused on his new authority of power. The king had none other to trust, and affairs of state came hard to him. And so for the next 18 years, Richelieu, exploiting the king's weaknesses, governed and molded France according to his own vision, unifying the country and making it a strong European power for centuries to come. Richelieu studied the persons who had the real power, found their biggest flaw, weakness in their character, and played on it wonderfully to become an indispensable asset to them. Once the power had gone to another, he would adapt his strategies accordingly. Law 34. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king. The way you carry yourself will often determine how you're treated. In the long run, appearing vulgar or common will make people disrespect you. For a king respects himself and inspires the same sentiment in others. By acting regally and confident of your powers, you make yourself seem destined to wear a crown. Powerful people may be tempted to affect the common man aura, trying to create the illusion that they and their subjects or underlings are basically the same. But the people whom this false gesture is intended to impress will quickly see through it. They understand that they are not being given more power, that it only appears as if they shared in the powerful person's fate. Leaders who try to dissolve that distance through a false chumminess gradually lose their ability to inspire loyalty, fear, or love. Instead they elicit contempt. They are too uninspiring even to be worth the guillotine. The best they can do is simply vanish in the night as if they were never there. When Christopher Columbus was trying to find funding for his legendary voyages, many around him believed he came from the Italian aristocracy, a descendant from the legendary Roman general Colonius. An illustrious background indeed, but it was nothing more than illustrious fantasy, for Columbus was actually the son of Domenico Colombo, a weaver who held a wine shop and had made a living selling cheese. Columbus himself had created the myth of his noble background, for he felt that he had a kind of royalty in his blood, destined for greatness. Using the fabricated story of his noble background, he married into an established Lisbon family that had excellent connections with Portuguese royalty. Using his in-laws, he managed to have a meeting with the King of Portugal, whom he petitioned to finance a westward voyage aimed at discovering a shorter route to Asia, which he would do in the king's name. Demanding incredibly bold hereditary rights for himself, he shall be titled the Grand Admiral of the Oceanic Sea, the office of Viceroy over any lands he found, and 10% of the future commerce with such lands. Columbus made these demands even though he had previously been a mere merchant. He knew almost nothing about navigation, he could not work a quadrant, and he had never led a group of men. Although the king refused with a smile, he treated his demands as legitimate, leaving the door open for the future. By asking for the moon, he had instantly raised his own status, for the king assumed that unless a man who set such a high price on himself were mad, which Columbus did not appear to be, he must somehow be worth it. Unlike Columbus, here's what we generally tend to do. We set up boundaries that only get firmer with time, we come to expect less from the world, we accept limitations that are really self-imposed, and we bow and scrape and apologize for even the simplest of requests. We have to deliberately force ourselves in the opposite direction, downplay the failures and ignore the limitations, and make ourselves demand and expect as much as a child. This strategy of the crown is based on a simple chain of cause and effect. If we believe we are destined for great things, our belief will radiate outward. This outward radiance will infect the people around you, and your limits and boundaries disappear. You will be surprised how often it bears fruit, when you let yourself be overcome by your self-belief. Even while you know you are practicing a kind of deception on yourself, act like a king or queen, and you are likely to be treated as one. But please, whatever you do, don't act like a princess. We have enough of these. The difference of this strategy is that the crown may separate you from other people. It is up to you to make that separation real, and you have to act differently, demonstrating your distance from those around you. One way to emphasize your difference is to always act with dignity, no matter the circumstance. Do not confuse regal bearing with arrogance. It betrays insecurity. Green mentions 3 strategies to reinforce a royal demeanor. First would be the Columbus strategy. Always make a bold demand, set your price high, and do not waver. B. The David and Goliath strategy. In a dignified way, go after the highest person in the building. By choosing a great opponent, you create the appearance of greatness. This puts you on the same plane as the chief executive you are attacking. And lastly, C. The gift strategy. Give a gift of some sort to those above you. By giving your patron a gift, you are saying that the two of you are equal. It is the old con game of giving so that you can take. The gift strategy is subtle and brilliant because you do not beg. You ask for help in a dignified way that implies equality between two people, one of whom just happens to have more money. Remember that it is up to you to set your own price. Ask for less and that is just what you will get. Ask for more, however, and you send a signal that you are worth a king's ransom. Even those who turn you down respect you for your confidence, and that respect will eventually pay off in ways you cannot imagine. But obviously there's a risk of reversal to this. So be warned. The idea behind the assumption of regal confidence is to set yourself apart from other people. But if you take this too far, it will be your undoing. Never make the mistake of thinking that you elevate yourself by humiliating people. Also, it is never a good idea to loom too high above the crowd. You make an easy target. And there are times when an aristocratic pose is eminently dangerous. Finally, it is true that you can sometimes find some power through affecting a kind of earthy vulgarity, which will prove amusing by its extremeness, separating yourself from other people by appearing even more vulgar than they are. This game is dangerous. There will always be people more vulgar than you, and you will easily be replaced the following season by someone younger and worse. Law number 35. Master the art of timing. Never seem to be in a hurry. Hurrying betrays a lack of control over yourself and over time. Always seem patient, as if you know that everything will come to you eventually. Become a detective of the right moment. Sniff out the spirit of the times, the trends that will carry you to power. Learn to stand back when the time is not yet ripe and to strike fiercely when it has reached fruition. Time is an artificial concept that we ourselves have created to make the limitlessness of eternity and the universe more bearable, more human. Since we have constructed the concept of time, we are also able to mold it to some degree, to play tricks with it. The time of a child is long and slow, with vast expanses. The time of an adult whizzes by frighteningly fast. Joseph Fouché, initially a mathematics teaching priest, never took his vows. He had waited for his chance to follow bigger dreams, and when 1789 the French Revolution broke out, he became a revolutionary. To miss the boat at this critical moment could have spelled disaster. Fouché merely adopted the spirit of the times, befriending the revolutionary Robespierre. He quickly rose in the rebel ranks and was elected as the representative of Nantes to the National Convention created that year to frame a new constitution for a French republic. When Fouché arrived in Paris to take his seat at the convention, a violent rift had broken out between the moderates and the radical Jacobins. Fouché sensed that in the long run, neither side would emerge victorious. Power rarely ends up in the hands of those who start a revolution, or even of those who further it. Power sticks to those who bring it to a conclusion. That was the side Fouché wanted to be on. Until his death, he would change sides several more times, supporting the execution of Louis XVI, turning against his former friend Robespierre, then supporting a young Napoleon, only to be conspiring against him alongside Talleyrand later on. Fouché had remarkable patience. Without patience as your sword and shield, your timing will fail and you will inevitably find yourself a loser. When the times were against Fouché, he did not struggle, get emotional, or strike out rashly. He kept his cool and remained a low profile, patiently building support among the citizenry, the bulwark in his next rise to power. Observing this law closely, here are the 10 key lessons in the art of timing. It is critical to recognize the spirit of the times. You must always work with the times, anticipate twists and turns, and never miss the boat. Recognize time by not what is loudest and most obvious in it, but by what lies hidden and dormant. Recognizing the prevailing winds does not necessarily mean running with them. Any potent social movement creates a powerful reaction, and it is unwise to anticipate what that reaction will be. Rather than ride the cresting wave of the movement, wait for the tide's ebb to carry you back to power. Upon occasion, bet on the reaction that is brewing, and place yourself in the vanguard of it. Recognize the moment then, to hide in the grass or slither under a rock, as well as the moment to bare your fangs and attack. Space we can recover, time never. Time depends on perception, which can be willfully altered. This is vital in mastering the art of timing. If the inner turmoil caused by our emotions tends to make time move faster, it follows that once we control our emotional responses to events, time will move much more slowly. This altered way of dealing with things tends to lengthen our perception of future time, opens up possibilities, and allows us the patience that is the principal requirement in the art of timing. Law number 36. Disdain things you cannot have. By acknowledging a petty problem, you give it existence and credibility. The more attention you pay an enemy, the stronger you make him, and a small mistake is often made worse and more visible when you try to fix it. It is sometimes best to leave things alone. If there is something you want but cannot have, show contempt for it. The less interest you reveal, the more superior you seem. In the year 1527, King Henry VIII of England decided he had to find a way to get rid of his wife, Catherine of Aragon. Catherine had failed to produce a son, a male heir who would ensure the continuance of his dynasty, and Henry thought he knew why. He had read in the Bible the passage, "And if a man shall take his brother's wife, it is an unclean thing. He hath uncovered his brother's nakedness. They shall be childless." Before marrying Henry, Catherine had married his older brother Arthur, but Arthur had died 5 months later. Henry had waited an appropriate time, then had married his brother's widow. Catherine was the daughter of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, and by marrying her he had kept alive a valuable alliance. Now, however, Catherine had to assure him that her brief marriage with Arthur had never been consummated, otherwise Henry would see their marriage as null and void. Catherine insisted that she had remained a virgin through her marriage to Arthur, and Pope Clement XII supported her by giving his blessing to the union, which he could not have done had he considered it incestuous. The king, convinced that she was lying and fearing God had punished them for their forbidden relationship, Henry applied to the Vatican, but Pope Clement would never annul the marriage, and so Henry simply started his own church, putting himself at the top and annulling his marriage that way. The Pope was furious and kept threatening the king with excommunication from the Catholic Church, but King Henry simply ignored him and his now banished from the court ex-wife completely. When you pay attention to a person, the two of you become partners of sorts, each moving in step to the actions and reactions of the other. In the process, you lose your initiative. It is a dynamic of all interactions. By acknowledging other people, even if only to fight with them, you open yourself to their influence. Had Henry locked horns with Catherine, he would have found himself mired in endless arguments that would have weakened his resolve and eventually worn him down. Henry would have none of this. He played a devastating power game, total disdain. By ignoring people, you cancel them out. This unsettles and infuriates them, but since they have no dealings with you, there's nothing they can do. Man, kick him, he'll forgive you. Flatter him, he may or may not see through you, but ignore him and he will hate you. Idries Shah, Caravan of Dreams. There's essentially two strategies to execute. The sour grapes approach. If there is something you want but you realize you cannot have it, the first thing you can do is draw attention to your disappointment by complaining about it. An infinitely more powerful tactic is to act as if it never really interested you in the first place. And the treating it lightly approach. When you are attacked by an inferior, deflect people's attention by making it clear that the attack has not even registered. Look away or answer sweetly, showing how little the attack concerns you. Similarly, when you yourself have committed a blunder, the best response is often to make less of your mistake by treating it lightly. But as always, be warned, develop the skill of sensing problems when they are still small and taking care of them before they become intractable. Learn to distinguish between the potentially disastrous and the mildly irritating, the nuisance that will quietly go away on its own. In either case, never completely take your eye off it. As long as it is alive, it can smolder and spark into life. Law number 37. Create compelling spectacles. Striking imagery and grand symbolic gestures create the aura of power. Everyone responds to them. Stage the spectacles for those around you full of arresting visuals and radiant symbols that heighten your presence. Dazzled by appearances, no one will notice what you are really doing. People do not always want words or rational explanations or demonstrations of the powers of science. They want an immediate appeal to their emotions. Give them that and they will do the rest, such as imagine that they can be healed by the light reflected from a rock 250,000 miles away. In the early 1780s, word spread through Berlin of the strange and spectacular medical practice of a Dr. Weisleder. He performed his miracles in an enormous converted beer hall, outside which Berliners began to notice ever longer lines of people. The blind, the lame, anyone with an illness incurable by normal medicine. When it leaked out that the doctor worked by exposing the patient to the rays of the moon, he soon became dubbed the Moon Doctor of Berlin. Sometime in 1783 it was reported that Dr. Weisleder had cured a well-to-do woman of a terrible ailment. He suddenly became a celebrity. Previously only the poorest of Berlin had been seen waiting outside the beer hall in their rags. Now magnificent carriages were parked outside and gentlemen in frock coats and ladies with enormous coiffures lined the street as sunset drew near. As they waited to get in, the poorer clients would explain to the upper-class people that the doctor only practiced when the moon was in its increasant phase. Many would add that they themselves had already been exposed to the healing powers he called forth from the rays of the moon. Even those who felt cured kept coming back, drawn by this powerful experience. Once the people reached the doctor or his wife on the second floor, having passed the spectacular first floor, he would take the patient, uncover the afflicted body part, and lift the boy up to the window which faced the light of the moon. He would rub the site of the injury or illness, mumble something unintelligible, look knowingly at the moon, and then after collecting his fee, send the patient on their way. Dr. Weisleder may have known nothing about medicine, but he understood human nature. He recognized that people do not always want words or rational explanations, or demonstrations of the powers of science. They want an immediate appeal to their emotions. Give them that and they will do the rest, such as imagine that they can be healed by the light of the moon. The spectacle was simple, and it needed to be. The doctor would not explain why this technique worked. He let his patients fill in the blanks with their placebo effects, their need to be heard, and so on. Here are the 4 essential steps Dr. Weisleder used to seem larger than life. Play with images, weaving visual clues into an encompassing gestalt. Establish a trademark to set yourself apart, in this case the moon. Find an image or symbol from the past that will neatly fit your situation, and then put it on your shoulders like a cape. Law number 38. Think as you like but behave like others. If you make a show of going against the times, flaunting your unconventional ideas and unorthodox ways, people will think that you only want attention and that you look down upon them. They will find a way to punish you for making them feel inferior. It is far safer to blend in and nurture the common touch. Share your originality only with tolerant friends and those who are sure to appreciate your uniqueness. People who flaunt their infatuation with a different culture are expressing a disdain and contempt for their own. They are using the outward appearance of the exotic to separate themselves from the common folk who unquestioningly follow the local customs and laws and to express their sense of superiority. Otherwise, they would act with more dignity, showing respect for those who do not share their desires. Indeed, their need to show their difference so dramatically often makes them disliked by the people whose beliefs they challenge, indirectly and subtly perhaps, but offensively nonetheless. Here's a historical example for someone breaking this law, as so few people even today seem to be aware of how to blend in. Around the year 478 BC, the city of Sparta sent an expedition to Persia led by the young Spartan nobleman Pausanias. The city-states of Greece had recently fought off a mighty invasion from Persia, and now Pausanias, along with allied ships from Athens, had orders to punish the invaders and win back the islands and coastal towns that the Persians had occupied. Both the Athenians and the Spartans had great respect for Pausanias. He had proven himself as a fearless warrior with a flair for the dramatic. With amazing speed, Pausanias and his troops took Cyprus, then captured Byzantium. Now master of part of the Persian Empire, Pausanias began to show signs of behavior that went beyond his normal flamboyance. He appeared in public wearing pomades in his hair and flowing Persian robes, and accompanied by a bodyguard of Egyptians. He held lavish banquets in which he sat in the Persian manner and demanded to be entertained. He stopped seeing his old friends, entered into communication with the Persian king Xerxes, and all in all affected the style and manner of a Persian dictator. Clearly power and success had gone to Pausanias' head. He then went ahead and flaunted his disdain for the Greek simple way of life, insulted the common Greek soldier, and even showed evidence that he had dreams of becoming a kind of Greek Xerxes. The Spartans relieved Pausanias of his command and called him home, sparing him. When they learned from his intentions to attack Greece alongside the Persians, thinking he was invincible, the Spartans made arrangements for his arrest. Pausanias, however, trapped in the sacred temple, refused to surrender and eventually died of starvation. The trick to your uniqueness contains that you pretend to disagree with dangerous ideas, but in the course of your disagreement, you give those ideas expression and exposure. You seem to conform to the prevailing orthodoxy, but those who know will understand the irony involved. You are protected. There is no point in making a display of your dangerous ideas if they only bring you suffering and persecution. Martyrdom serves no purpose. Better to live in an oppressive world even to thrive in it. And find a way to express your ideas subtly for those who understand you. Lying your pearls before swine will only bring you trouble. The truth is, we all tell lies and hide our true feelings, for complete free expression is a social impossibility. From an early age we learn to conceal our thoughts, telling the prickly and insecure what we know they want to hear, watching carefully lest we offend them. There are ideas and values that most people accept, and it is pointless to argue. We believe what we want to, but on the outside we wear a mask. There are people, however, who see such restraints as an intolerable infringement on their freedom. They have a need to prove their superiority of their values and beliefs. In the end, their arguments convince only a few and offend a great deal more. The reason arguments do not work is that most people hold their ideas and values without thinking about them. There is a strong emotional content in their beliefs, and they really do not want to have to rework their habits of thinking, and when you challenge them, whether directly through your arguments or indirectly through your behavior, they are hostile. Law 39. Stir up waters to catch fish. Anger and emotions are strategically counterproductive. You must always stay calm and objective, but if you can make your enemies angry while staying calm yourself, you gain a decided advantage. Put your enemies off balance, find the chink in their vanity through which you can rattle them, and you hold the strings. By the late 1920s, Haile Selassie had nearly achieved his goal of assuming total control over Ethiopia, a country he felt needed strong and unified leadership. As regent to the Empress Sauditu and heir to the throne, Selassie had spent several years weakening the power of Ethiopia's various warlords. Now only one real obstacle stood in his way: the Empress and her husband Ras Guksa. Selassie knew the royal couple hated him and wanted to get rid of him, so to cut short their plotting, he made Guksa the governor of the northern province of Begimeder, forcing him to leave the capital, where the empress lived. For several years Guksa played the loyal administrator, but Selassie did not trust him. He knew that Guksa and the empress were plotting revenge. As time passed and Guksa made no move, the chances of a plot only increased. Selassie drew Guksa out, got under his skin, and pushed him into action before he was ready. Guksa fell for the trap that had been laid for him. Before Selassie had ordered Guksa to fight the Azebu Galas, he had secured the support of the Ethiopian church, and before the revolt got underway, he had bribed several of Guksa's key allies not to show up for battle. As the rebel army marched south, airplanes flew overhead dropping leaflets announcing that the highest church officials had recognized Selassie as the true Christian leader of Ethiopia, and that they had been excommunicated Guksa for fomenting a civil war. And as battle loomed and the support that Guksa's allies had promised him failed to show up, soldiers began to flee or defect. When the battle came, the rebel army quickly collapsed. Refusing to surrender, Ras Guksa was killed in the fighting. On April 30, Selassie issued a formal proclamation announcing his new title, Emperor of Ethiopia. A sovereign should never launch an army out of anger. A leader should never start a war out of wrath. Sun Tzu, 4th century BC. There is 7 problems with the angry response. At first it may strike fear and terror, but only in some. And as the days pass and the storm clears, other responses emerge. Embarrassment and uneasiness about the shouter's capacity for going out of control. Resentment festers of what has been said. You always make unfair and exaggerated accusations. A few such tirades and people are counting the days until you are gone. To show your frustration is to show that you have lost your power to shape events. It is the helpless action of the child who resorts to a hysterical fit to get his way. Never let them see you sweat. Tantrums neither intimidate nor inspire loyalty. They only create doubts and uneasiness about your power. Exposing your weakness, these stormy eruptions often herald a fall. The essence of the law is, when the waters are still, your opponents have the time and space to plot actions that they will initiate and control. So stir the waters, force the fish to the surface, get them to act before they are ready, and steal the initiative. The best way to do this is to play on uncontrollable emotions: pride, vanity, love, and hate. Once the water is stirred up, the little fish cannot help but raise the debate. Law number 40. Despise the free lunch. What is offered for free is dangerous. It usually involves either a trick or a hidden obligation. What has worth is worth paying for. By paying your own way, you stay clear of gratitude, guilt, and deceit. It is also often wise to pay the full price. There are no cutting corners with excellence. Be lavish with your money and keep it circulating, for generosity is a sign and a magnet for power. Being open and flexible with money also teaches the value of strategic generosity, a variation on the old trick of giving when you are about to take. By giving the appropriate gift, you put the recipient under obligation. Generosity softens people up to be deceived. By gaining a reputation for liberality, you win people's admiration while distracting them from your power plays. By strategically spreading your wealth, you charm the others, creating pleasure and making valuable allies. Louis XIV had an eagle eye for the strategic power of money. When he came to the throne, the powerful nobility had recently proven a thorn in the monarchy's side and seethed with rebelliousness. So he impoverished these aristocrats by making them spend enormous sums on maintaining their positions in the court, making them dependent on royal largesse for their livelihood. He had them in his claws. Next, Louis brought the nobles to their knees with strategic generosity. Whenever he noticed a stubborn courtier whose influence he needed to gain or whose troublemaking he needed to squelch, he would use his vast wealth to soften the soil. First, he would ignore his victim, making the man anxious. Then the man would suddenly find that his son had been given a well-paid post, or that funds had been spent liberally in his home region, or that he had been given a painting he had long coveted. Presents would flow from Louis's hands. Finally, weeks or months later, Louis would ask for the favor he had needed all along. A man who had once vowed to do anything to stop the king would have made him rebellious. This was far more insidious. Facing hardened earth in which nothing could take root, Louis loosened the soil before he planted his seeds. Louis understood that there is a deep-rooted emotional element in our attitude on money. An element going back to childhood. When we are children, all kinds of complicated feelings about our parents center around gifts. We see the giving of a gift as a sign of love and approval. And that emotional element never goes away. The recipients of gifts, financial or otherwise, are suddenly as vulnerable as children, especially if the gift comes from someone in authority. Here's 5 simple lessons surrounding this law. Friends who offer favors without asking for payment will later want something far dearer than the money you would have paid them. The bargain has hidden problems, both material and psychological. Learn to pay and to pay well. Bait your deceptions with the possibility of easy money. People are essentially lazy and want wealth to fall in their lap rather than work for it. For a small sum, sell them advice on how to make millions. And that small sum will become a fortune when multiplied by thousands of suckers. That is a literal quote from the book. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I am displaying the book's knowledge, alright? And 4, lure people in with the prospect of easy money and you have the room to work still more deceptions on them. Greed is powerful enough to blind your victims to anything. And lastly, greed does not pay. If you're greedy, you will end up like Ebenezer Scrooge. Be generous instead and receive the love back that you gave out to the world. You give 100 gifts more, 1,000 gifts more. You will receive more than enough gifts back. Law number 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. What happens first always appears better and more original than what comes after. If you succeed a great man or have a famous parent, you will have to accomplish double their achievements to outshine them. Do not get lost in their shadow or stuck in a past not of your own making. Establish your own name and identity by changing course. Slay the overbearing father, disparage his legacy, and gain power by shining in your own way. Power depends on appearing larger than other people, and when you are lost in the shadow of the father, the king, the great predecessor, you cannot possibly project such a presence. But how does the son step out of the father's shadow? For one, he could adopt the ruthless strategy of Alexander the Great. Disparage the past, create your own kingdom, and put the father in the shadows instead of letting him do the same to you. This is a dialogue from the movie Alexander between Parmenion and my great etc. grandfather. I pray to Apollo you soon realize how far you've turned from your father's path. Damn you, Parmenion, by the gods and your Apollo! War was in my father's guts, it wasn't overripe and reasoned like yours. He never lusted for war, Alexander, or enjoyed it so. He consulted his peers in council, among equals. the Macedonian way. He didn't make decisions based on his personal desires. I've taken us further than my father ever dreamt. Old man, we're in a new world. It was played by Colin Farrell, an Irishman, so... If you cannot materially start from ground zero, it would be foolish to renounce an inheritance. You can at least begin from ground zero psychologically. Throw off the weight of the past and chart a new direction. Recognize, like Alexander, instinctively that the privileges of birth are impediments to power. Be merciless with the past, not only with your father and his father, but with your own earlier achievements. Only the weak rest on their laurels and dote on past triumphs. In the game of power, there is never time to rest. Louis XIV died in 1715 after a glorious 55-year reign, all eyes focused on his great-grandson and chosen successor, the future Louis XV. From a country that had descended into civil war in the late 1640s, Louis XIV forged the mightiest realm in Europe. Great generals would tremble in his presence. A cook once made a mistake in preparing a dish and committed suicide rather than face the king's wrath. Louis had many mistresses, but their power ended in the bedroom. He filled his court with the most brilliant minds of the age. The symbol of his power was Versailles. Refusing to accept the palace of his forefathers, the Louvre, he built his own palace in what was the middle of nowhere, symbolizing that this was a new order he had founded, one without precedent. He made Versailles the centerpiece of his reign, a place that all the powerful of Europe envied and visited with a sense of awe. In essence, Louis took a great void, the decaying monarchy of France, and filled it with his own symbols and radiant power. Louis XV, on the other hand, symbolizes the fate of all those who inherit something large or who follow in a great man's footsteps. It would seem easy for a son or successor to build on the grand foundation left for them. But in the realm of power, the opposite is true. The pampered, indulged son almost always squanders the inheritance, for he does not start with the father's need to fill the void. As Machiavelli states, necessity is what impels men to take action, and once the necessity is gone, only rot and decay are left. But when they began to make sovereignty hereditary, the children quickly degenerated from their fathers, and so far from trying to equal their father's virtues, they considered that a prince had nothing else to do than to excel all the rest in idleness, indulgence, and every other variety of pleasure. Niccolò Bernardo Machiavelli, see? Here's 5 reasons to bury the past. The past prevents the young hero from creating his own world. He must do as his father did, even after that father is dead or powerless. The hero must bow and scrape before his predecessor and yield to tradition and precedent. What had success in the past must be carried over to the present, even though circumstances have greatly changed. And the past also weighs the hero down with an inheritance that he is terrified of losing, making him timid and cautious. The question then arises, how does one bury the past? Power depends on the ability to fill a void, to occupy a field that has been cleared of the dead weight of the past. Only after the father figure has been properly done away with will you have the necessary space to create and establish a new order. Variations on the execution of the king that disguise the violence of the impulse by channeling it in socially acceptable forms. Perhaps the simplest way to escape the shadow of the past is simply to belittle it, playing on the timeless antagonism between the generations, stirring up the young against the old, and establish distance from your predecessor, which demands some symbolism, a way of advertising itself publicly, as Louis had changed the king's palace from the Louvre to Versailles. Essentially, the problem is the following. The overbearing predecessor fills the vistas before you with symbols of the past, and you have no room to create your own name. Lastly, the superstitious belief that if the person before you succeeded by doing A, B, and C, you can recreate their success by doing the same thing. You must go with the times, adapt, and overcome. This is part of the solution. Hunt out the vacuums, those areas in culture that have been left vacant. With this you can become the first and principal figure to shine, and make a name for yourself where no shadows could obscure your presence. But remember, you are your own father. Do not let yourself spend years creating yourself only to let your guard down and allow the ghost of the past, father, habit, or history to sneak back in. As always, tread lightly. The past often has elements worth appropriating, qualities that would be foolish to reject out of a need to distinguish yourself. Even Alexander the Great recognized this important fact because he was influenced by his father's skill in organizing an army. Making a display of doing things differently from your predecessor can make you seem childish and in fact out of control, unless of course your actions have logic of their own. Finally, it is often wise to keep an eye on the young, your future rivals in power. Just as you try to rid yourself of your father, they will soon play the same trick on you, denigrating everything you have accomplished. Law 42. Strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. Trouble can often be traced to a single strong individual, the stirrer, the arrogant underling, the poisoner of goodwill. If you allow such people room to operate, others will succumb to their influence. Do not wait for the troubles they cause to multiply. Do not try to negotiate with them. They are irredeemable. Neutralize their influence by isolating or banishing them. Strike at the source of the trouble, and the sheep will scatter. Strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Cut the snake at the head. These are fairly common proverbs, but what do they mean? Within any group, trouble can most often be traced to a single source. The unhappy, chronically dissatisfied one who will always stir up dissension and infect the group with his or her ill ease. Before you know what hit you, the dissatisfaction spreads. Act before it becomes impossible to disentangle one strand of misery from another, or to see how the whole thing started. Isolation, then, is one of the most powerful ways to deal with that source of trouble. Who should you isolate? Powerful people who have alienated themselves from the group. People whose power has gone to their heads and they consider themselves superior. Those people who have perhaps lost their knack of communicating with ordinary folk. Basically, people breaking Law 18, isolation is dangerous. Search out people who hold high positions yet who find themselves isolated on the board, and find the one head that matters, the person with willpower or smarts, or most important of all, charisma. Identify and shut the hellraisers down. First, recognize troublemakers by their overbearing presence or by their complaining nature. Once you spot them, do not try to reform them or appease them. That will only make things worse. Do not attack them, whether directly or indirectly, for they are poisonous in nature and will work underground to destroy you. Do as the Athenians did. Banish them before it is too late. Separate them from the group before they become the eye of a tornado. Do not give them time to stir up anxieties and sow discontent. And do not give them room to move. Let one person suffer so that the rest can live in peace. Once you recognize who the stirrer is, pointing it out to other people will accomplish a great deal. Understanding who controls the group dynamic is a critical realization, because stirrers drive by hiding in the group, disguising their actions among the reactions of others. But why isolate? Can't you just hire an assassin and go about your daily life? Well, that is an option, but as history has shown, not a very good one. You see, getting rid of someone doesn't dissolve the loyalty of those who are close to your enemy. Rather, isolate, as they are vulnerable to you, and your presence becomes magnified. It can prove a powerful way of bringing people under your spell to seduce or swindle them. Here they feel weak and succumb to deception more easily. As powerful as they may be, people like this can be turned to use. It is often better to isolate your enemies than to destroy them. You seem less brutal. Look at them like apples falling into your lap, easily seduced and able to catapult you into power yourself. Isolation disheartens the sheep beyond any rational measure. And most important of all, cancer begins with a single cell. Excise it before it spreads beyond cure. How does one isolate his enemies? Render their actions visible and they lose their power to upset. Separate your victims from their power base or their usual social context. The result is the same as that achieved with the help of an assassin, for in the game of power, isolation spells death. There's three kinds of isolation. The physical, banishment or absence from the court. The political, narrowing their base of support. And the psychological, alienating them from the group through slander and insinuation. Remember these when someone is trying to isolate you. Machiavelli wrote, "Any harm you do to a man should be done in such a way that you need not fear his revenge." Basically what Law 15 is all about. Crushing your opponents completely. If you act to isolate your enemy, make sure he lacks the means to repay the favor. If you apply this law, in other words, apply it from a position of superiority, so that you have nothing to fear from his resentment. I have recently watched a great movie with Keanu Reeves, and when Keanu is in it, that is pretty much a given. But the movie tells the story of the 47 Ronin. As a samurai warrior, you swore allegiance to your masters. If they were to be killed, their death had to be avenged. If the samurai refused to take revenge in their fallen leader's name, they would lose the honor of being a samurai, from there on living a dishonorable life in shame as Ronin. What happens in the movie is what happens if you fail to isolate your enemy from his followers. Even post-mortem, your enemies may come to haunt you in the form of their allies. Law 43. Work on the heart and mind of others. Coercion creates a reaction that will eventually work against you. You must seduce others into wanting to move in your direction. A person you have seduced becomes your loyal pawn, and the way to seduce others is to operate on their individual psychologies and weaknesses. Soften up the resistant by working on their emotions, playing on what they hold dear and what they fear. Ignore the hearts and minds of others, and they will grow to hate you. Near the end of the reign of Louis XV, all of France seemed desperate for change. When the king's grandson and chosen successor, the future Louis XVI, married the 15-year-old daughter of the Empress of Austria, the French caught a glimpse of the future that seemed hopeful. The young bride, Marie Antoinette. But as soon as Marie Antoinette became queen, she abandoned herself to the pleasures she loved most. Ordering and wearing the most expensive gowns and jewelry in the realm, sporting the most elaborate hair in history. Her sculpted coiffures rising as much as 3 feet above her head, and throwing a constant succession of masked balls and feats. All of these whims she paid for on credit, never concerning herself with the cost or who paid the bills. She had been running up her huge expenditures. The country was headed for ruin, but her subjects could rot in hell for all she cared. In 1789, an unprecedented event took place, the beginning of the French Revolution. The queen did not worry. Let the people have their little rebellion, she seemed to think. It would soon quiet down and she would be able to resume her life of pleasure. That year the people marched on Versailles, forcing the royal family to quit the palace and take residence in Paris. This was a triumph for the rebels, but it offered the queen an opportunity to heal the wounds she had opened and establish contact with the people. The queen, however, had not learned her lesson. Not once would she leave the palace during her stay in Paris. In October of 1793, when the revolution officially declared the end of the monarchy, she was found guilty and finally knelt at the guillotine, unrepentant and defiant to the bitter end. Here are 5 of the most disastrous attitudes in the realm of power. Types like Marie Antoinette live in their own bubble. They seem to feel they are born kings and queens and that attention is owed to them. They do not consider anyone else's nature, but bulldoze over people with their self-righteous arrogance. Pampered and indulged as children, so as adults they still believe that everything must come to them, convinced of their own charm. They make no effort to charm, seduce, or gently persuade anyone. When the energy and the art of seduction commands that at all times you must attend to those around you, gauging their particular psychology, tailor your words to what you know will entice and seduce them. The higher you are elevated above the crowd, the greater the need to remain attuned to the hearts and minds of those below you. Create a base of support to maintain you at the pinnacle. Your first option, to not distress yourself with such petty affairs, may be quick and easy, but over time it brews ugly emotions in the hearts of the vanquished. Their resentment turns to hatred. Such animosity keeps you on the edge. You spend your energy protecting what you've gained, growing paranoid and defensive. Without that base of support, your power will teeter, and at the slightest change of fortune, those below you will gladly assist in your fall from grace. Force will only strengthen their resistance. Think critically before you act. Use patience. It brings you peace of mind. It converts a potential enemy into a pillar of support. Take the time to calculate and attune yourself to your target's emotional makeup and psychological weaknesses. Be alert to what separates them from everyone else, their individual psychology, and what they share with everyone else. Soften them up, alternate harshness with mercy, and play on their basic fears, hate, jealousy, and also primary emotions. Once you break them down, you will have a lifelong friend and fiercely loyal ally, demonstrating as simply as possible how an action will benefit them. Self-interest is the strongest motive of all. It secures the deal. The wider your support base, the stronger your power. But tread lightly, understanding that one alienated, disaffected soul can spark a blaze of discontent. You too must constantly win over more allies on all levels. Law 44. Disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect. The mirror reflects reality, but it is also the perfect tool for deception. When you mirror your enemies doing exactly as they do, they cannot figure out your strategy. The mirror effect mocks and humiliates them, making them overreact. By holding up a mirror to the psyches, you seduce them with the illusion that you shared their values. By holding up a mirror to their actions, you teach them a lesson. Few can resist the power of the mirror effect. Early on in his career, the ambitious statesman and general Alcibiades of Athens fashioned a formidable weapon that became the source of his power. In every encounter with others, he would sense their moods and tastes, then carefully tailor his words and actions to mirror their inmost desires. He would seduce them with the idea that their values were superior to everyone else's, and that his goal was to model himself on them or help them realize their dreams. Few could resist his charm. The first man to fall under his spell was the philosopher Socrates. Alcibiades represented the opposite of the Socratic ideal of simplicity and uprightness. He lived lavishly and was completely unprincipled. Whenever he met Socrates, however, he mirrored the older man's sobriety, eating simply, accompanying Socrates on long walks, and talking only of philosophy and virtue. Socrates was not completely fooled. He was not unaware of Alcibiades' other life, but that only made him vulnerable to a logic that flattered him. Only in my presence does this man submit to a virtuous influence. Only I have such power over him. This feeling intoxicated Socrates, who became Alcibiades' fervent admirer and supporter, one day even risking his own life to rescue the young man in battle. Alcibiades then charmed the Athenians, got accused of profaning sacred statues, and fled. He then charmed the Spartans, impregnated the king's wife, and fled. And lastly, he charmed the Persians, secretly helping the Athenians win their war with Sparta, and, well, fled Persia, but returned back home where the Athenians embraced him with open arms in 408 BC. Wherever Alcibiades went, whoever he had to deal with, he would leave behind his own values and appear to share the values of his victims. No one could resist a man who not only concurred with them, but also admired their ways of living, seeming to be one of their own. This mirror effect, this very early discovery of what some call a neurosimplistic programming technique today, was way more effective than any sharpened sword and shield Alcibiades could have wielded. Green describes these four main mirror effects: the neutralizing effect, the narcissus effect, the moral effect, and the hallucinatory effect. All good and well, but what does that mean, Elacertus? I am so glad you asked. In neutralizing, do what your enemies do, following their actions as best as you can. And they can't see what you're up to, as their strategy for dealing with you depends on your reaction. With the narcissus effect, you look deep into the souls of other people, fathom their inmost desires, their values, their tastes, their spirit, and you reflect it back to them, feeding their narcissism. With the moral effect, you mirror what other people have done to you, and do so in a way that makes them realize you are doing to them exactly what they did to you. The hallucinatory effect comes from creating a perfect copy of an object, a place, or a person. Mirroring people is extremely effective. You give them the feeling that you share their thoughts and goals. If they suspect you have ulterior motives, the mirror shields you, preventing them from figuring you out. By playing the double, you steal their thunder, suck away their initiative, and make them feel helpless. You also gain the ability to choose when and how to unsettle them. The mirror saves you mental energy. Simply echoing the moves of others gives you the space you need to develop a strategy of your own. But tread lightly. Mirrors contain great power, but also dangerous reefs. You can often back into a mirrored situation without fully understanding it. Most often you suffer by the comparison, seeming either weaker than the previous occupant of your position, or else tainted by any unpleasant associations that person has left behind. Avoid the association effects like the plague. In a mirrored situation, you have little or no control over the reflections and recollections that will be connected to you. Any situation beyond your control is dangerous. Doesn't matter if the person or event has positive associations, you will suffer from not being able to live up to them, since the past generally appears greater than the present. Law 45. Preach change, but never reform quickly. Everyone understands the need for change in the abstract, but on the day-to-day level, people are creatures of habit. Too much innovation is traumatic and will lead to revolt. If you're new to a position of power, or an outsider trying to build a power base, make a show of respecting the old way of doing things. If change is necessary, make it feel like a gentle improvement on the past. Sometime in the early 1520s, King Henry VIII of England decided to divorce his wife, Catherine of Aragon, because she had failed to bear him a son, and because he had fallen in love with the young and comely Anne Boleyn, or something like that. The Pope opposed the divorce and threatened the king with excommunication. The king's most powerful minister, Cardinal Wolsey, also saw no need for divorce, and his half-hearted support of the king cost him his position and soon his life. One man in Henry's cabinet, Thomas Cromwell, not only supported him in his desire for a divorce, but had an idea for realizing it: a complete break with the past. He convinced the king that by severing ties with Rome and making himself the head of a newly formed English church, he could divorce Catherine and marry Anne. By 1531, Henry saw this as the only solution. To reward Cromwell for a simple but brilliant idea, he elevated this son of a blacksmith to the post of royal counselor. So far as we've seen in Law 36, disdain things you cannot have, this strategy was a great success. King Henry successfully impregnated his new, fertile wife and could now rest assured his legacy would carry on. But this new character, Thomas Cromwell, he wasn't in any way subtle about his approach. He envisioned a new Protestant order in England, with the power of the Catholic Church smashed and its vast wealth in the hands of the king and the government. And his ways of going about it were unabashedly bold. He began to seize the holdings in the churches and monasteries of England, putting them out of existence one by one. Virtually overnight, England was converted to a new official religion. A terror fell on the country. Some people had suffered under the Catholic Church, which before the reforms had been immensely powerful, but most Britons had strong ties to Catholicism and to its comforting rituals. They watched in horror as churches were demolished, images of the Madonna and saints were broken in pieces, stained glass windows were smashed, and the church's treasures were confiscated. 1535, powerful revolts in the north of England threatened to topple Henry from his throne. By the following year he had suppressed the rebellions, but he had also begun to see the costs of Cromwell's reforms. The king himself had never wanted to go this far. He had only wanted a divorce. It is critical to understand that change comes with consequences. The man who initiates strong reforms often becomes the scapegoat for any kind of dissatisfaction. Eventually, the reaction to your reforms may consume you, for change is upsetting to the human animal, even when it is for the good. You can see this, for example, with the YouTube comment section when it changed to this Google Plus thing. When it actually improved, but people were still upset, because change is generally a wish people have, but dislike when it's happening. Ironic, to say the least. The world is and always has been full of insecurity and threat, and we latch onto familiar faces and create habits and rituals to make the world more comfortable. Change can be pleasant and even sometimes desirable in the abstract, but too much of it creates an anxiety that will stir and boil beneath the surface and then eventually erupt. So how does one approach times of reforming change? A simple gesture like using an old title or keeping the same number of a group will tie you to the past and support you with the authority of history. Make a loud and public display of support for the values of the past. Seem to be a zealot for tradition, and few will notice how unconventional you really are. Quietly enact a radical change while appearing to safeguard tradition. The changes you make must seem less innovative than they are. If your reform is too far ahead of its time, few will understand it, and it will stir up anxiety and be hopelessly misinterpreted. Also, if you work in a tumultuous time, there is power to be gained by preaching a return to the past, to comfort, tradition, and ritual. But during a period of stagnation, on the other hand, play the card of reform and revolution, but be aware of what you stir up. Those who finish a revolution are rarely those who start it. You will not succeed at this dangerous game unless you are willing to forestall the inevitable reaction against it by playing with appearances and building on the past. As always, be warned. The past is a corpse to be used as you see fit. If what happened in the recent past was painful and harsh, it is self-destructive to associate yourself with it. Even an ugly recent history will seem preferable to an empty space. Fill that space immediately with new rituals and forms. Soothing and growing familiar, these will secure your position among the masses. The perfect example, once again, is as detailed in Law 26, Keep Your Hands Clean. Cesare Borgia, who was facing a great disdain from the populace from all the gruesome actions that had come with his ascent to the throne. They wanted immediate change or a revolution would have broken out. Cesare picked up on that, blamed Remiro di Orco, made a public display of his spiked up head, and then went on to throw many balls, feasts, hand out food, basically appear like a saint. In short, he calmed the people who had wanted his downfall with prompt change and strategic generosity, as seen in Law 40 with Louis XIV, by leaving the dark past behind and announcing the good times that lie ahead. Law 46. Never appear too perfect. Appearing better than others is always dangerous, but most dangerous of all is to appear to have no faults or weaknesses. Envy creates silent enemies. It is smart to occasionally display defects and admit to harmless vices in order to deflect envy and appear more human and approachable. Only gods and the dead can seem perfect with impunity. Law 47. In victory, learn when to stop. The moment of victory is often the moment of greatest peril. In the heat of victory, arrogance and overconfidence can push you past the goal you had aimed for. And by going too far, you make more enemies than you defeat. Do not allow success to go to your head. There is no substitute for strategy and careful planning. Set a goal, and when you reach it, stop. No single person in history has occupied a more delicate and precarious position than the king's mistress. She had no real or legitimate power base to fall back on in times of trouble. She was surrounded by packs of envious courtiers eagerly anticipating her fall from grace. And finally, since the source of her power was usually her physical beauty, for most royal mistresses, that fall was inevitable and unpleasant. When Jeanne-Antoinette Poisson was a middle-class child of 9, she had been told by a fortune teller that she would someday be the king's favorite. This seemed an absurd dream, since the royal mistress almost always came from the aristocracy. Jeanne nevertheless believed herself destined to seduce the king, and doing so became her obsession. She applied herself to the talents the king's favorite had to have: music, dancing, acting, horseback riding, and she excelled in every one of them. Word quickly spread of her beauty, talent, charm, and intelligence. Jeanne Poisson became close friends with Voltaire, Montesquieu, and other great minds of the time. But she never lost sight of the goal she had set for herself as a girl: to capture the heart of the king. In 1744, Louis XV's current mistress, the Duchesse de Châteauroux, died. Jeanne placed herself everywhere he would be: at masked balls at Versailles, at the opera, wherever their paths would cross and wherever she could display her many talents. The king succumbed to her charms, and in a ceremony at Versailles in September of 1745, this 24-year-old daughter of a middle-class banking agent was officially inaugurated as the king's mistress. From now on, she would be known as Madame de Pompadour. She organized elaborate hunting parties, masked balls, and whatever else it would take to keep the king amused and diverted outside the bedroom. She became a patroness of the arts and the arbiter of taste and fashion for all of France. Her enemies at the court only grew in number with each new success, but Madame de Pompadour thwarted them in a totally novel way for a king's mistress, with extreme politeness. In 1751, when Madame de Pompadour was at the height of her power, she experienced her worst crisis. She found it increasingly difficult to meet the king's demands in bed. This was usually the point at which the mistress would meet her end, struggling to maintain her position as her beauty faded. But Madame de Pompadour encouraged the king to set up a brothel on the grounds of Versailles. There the middle-aged king could have liaisons with the most beautiful young girls in the realm. Her reign as mistress had lasted an unprecedented 20 years. She was regretted by all, wrote the Duc de Croix, for she was kindly and helpful to everyone who approached her. Madame de Pompadour was aware of the temporariness of her power. She succeeded where all others had failed because she never pressed her good fortune. Instead of bullying the courtiers from her powerful position as the king's mistress, she tried to win their support. She never revealed the slightest hint of greed or arrogance. When she could no longer perform her physical duties as mistress, she did not fret at the thought of someone replacing her in bed. She simply encouraged the king to take young lovers, knowing that the younger and prettier they were, the less of a threat they posed, since they could not compare to her in charm and sophistication, and would soon bore the monarch. Notice how Jeanne Antoinette Poisson, aside from her origins, appeared to be perfect and still managed not to stir up too much envy. And where there was trouble brewing, she dealt with it with extreme kindness. Law 48. Assume formlessness. By taking a shape, by having a visible plan, you open yourself to attack. Instead of taking a form for your enemy to grasp, keep yourself adaptable and on the move. Accept the fact that nothing is certain and no law is fixed. The best way to protect yourself is to be as fluid and formless as water. Never bet on stability or lasting order. Everything changes. When a Spartan boy reached the age of 7, he was taken from his mother and placed in a military club where he was trained to fight and underwent the strictest discipline. The boys slept on beds of reeds. They were allotted only one outer garment to wear for an entire year. They studied none of the arts. Music was banned, and only slaves were permitted to practice the crafts that were necessary to sustain them. The only skills the Spartans taught were those of warfare. Children seen as weaklings were left to die in a cavern in the mountains. No system of money or trading was allowed in Sparta. Acquired wealth, they believed, would sow selfishness and dissension, weakening their warrior discipline. Sparta was a society dedicated to the art of war. Spartans would be tougher, stronger, and fiercer than their neighbors. This was the only way they could ensure their stability and survival. The Spartans' single-mindedness allowed them to forge the most powerful infantry in the world. They marched in perfect order and fought with incomparable bravery. Their tight-knit phalanxes could vanquish an army 10 times their size, as they proved in defeating the Persians at Thermopylae. A Spartan column on the march would strike terror in the enemy. It seemed to have no weaknesses. Yet, although the Spartans proved themselves mighty warriors, they had no interest in creating an empire. They only wanted to keep what they had already conquered and to defend it against invaders. Decades would pass without a single change in the system that had succeeded so well in preserving Sparta's status quo. At the same time that the Spartans were evolving their warlike culture, Athens was rising to equal prominence. They took the sea, became great merchants, and spread their currency throughout the Mediterranean. Unlike the rigid Spartans, the Athenians responded to every problem with consummate creativity, adapting to the occasion and creating new social forms and new arts at an incredible pace. Their society was in constant flux. In 431 BC, the war that had been brewing between Athens and Sparta for so long finally erupted. It lasted 27 years, but after many twists of fortune, the Spartan war machine finally emerged victorious. Sparta had defeated Athens, but the fluid Athenian way of life was slowly breaking down its discipline and loosening its rigid order. They were adapting to losing their empire, managing to thrive as a cultural and economic center. Meanwhile, Sparta grew weaker and weaker. Some 30 years after defeating Athens, it lost an important battle with the city-state of Thebes. Almost overnight, this once mighty nation collapsed and would never recover. In facing a serious problem, controlling superior numbers, Sparta reacted like an animal that develops a shell to protect itself from the environment. But like a turtle, the Spartans sacrificed mobility for safety. They had no culture beyond warfare, no arts to relieve the tension, a constant anxiety about the status quo. Victory would mean new lands to govern, which they did not want. Defeat would mean the end of their military machine, which they didn't want either. Only stasis allowed them to survive. But nothing in the world can remain stable forever, and the shell or system you evolve for your protection will someday prove your undoing. It is best to adapt and overcome instead. When you want to fight us, we don't let you and you can't find us. But when we want to fight you, we make sure that you can't get away and we hit you squarely and wipe you out. The enemy advances, we retreat. The enemy camps, we harass. The enemy tires, we attack. The enemy retreats, we pursue.
Voici le drame. Thèbes se démoralise. Après le Sphinx, la peste. Le cœur supplie Oedipe de sauver sa ville. Oedipe a vaincu le sphinx, il promet.